Let's get it. 580 Sports Talk coming at you on a Red Friday, an AFC Championship game. Red Friday edition of 580 Sports Talk here on 580 WIBW FM 104.9, online at 580WIBW.com, and on our YouTube channel, 580 Sports Talk. I'm Dan Lucero. Spencer Dupuis is with me in studio. Brendan Dworzinski joins us from parts unknown. The gang's all here. We're glad you're along for this edition of 580 Sports Talk, and we have plenty to get to on the show today. The Chiefs and the Ravens for the Lamar Hunt Trophy at M&T Bank Stadium in Baltimore on Sunday, and we are going to preview it all. We'll have our keys to the game, our big Chief picks, and a score prediction as well. We will hear from some of the main participants in this one. Andy Reid spoke extremely briefly. We'll hear from him. We'll also hear from Travis Kelce and L'Jarius Sneed as well, coming up a little later on this hour. And we'll get Matt Derrick's perspective as well, our Chiefs insider from ChiefsDigest.com. Matt Derrick will join the show at the bottom of the 3 o'clock hour to get us ready for the Chiefs and the Ravens, the 6th consecutive AFC Championship game appearance for the Chiefs. There is another game on Sunday as well, the NFC Championship game, the Lions and the 49ers. We'll have some thoughts on that game as well. We will bring you the sports headlines. We will preview some college basketball for Saturday. KU and K-State both in action. We'll crown a weekly champion on What Is Wrong With You. We'll play a little Change My Mind. We'll give some mea culpas on Second Thought. It's a jam-packed show. We've only got 3 hours for it today because we will be, again, giving way to Lewis Toyota High School Basketball Game of the Week coverage at 5 o'clock. We've got coverage coming your way from day 2 of the Capital City Classic starting at 5 o'clock. 2 outstanding winners bracket semifinals coming your way tonight. Wichita Heights and Washburn Rural, the first of those games, followed by Seaman and Wichita South. So we hope you'll stay with us for an evening of high school basketball tonight on 580 WIBW. But we began with the AFC Championship game. We began with the Chiefs and the Ravens. I asked Mitch Holtis yesterday when we had him on the show if he felt like this was the tallest task for the Chiefs in the playoffs, in the Mahomes era, maybe the best team or the biggest obstacle. It's the first time in 6 AFC Championship games that the Chiefs have been an underdog, a betting underdog going into one of these games. And Mitch demurred and said, this is a team that's encountered and surmounted a lot of great challenges in the last 5 seasons, which is true. And they encountered and surmounted a challenge as an underdog last week against Buffalo, which is also true. So I don't think that the Chiefs' mentality in particular is looking at this game like they're the final boss. Like you've got to beat Bowser before you can rescue the princess. And this is Bowser. I don't necessarily think that is the case. That is the perception of this game. But I am curious because I do believe this is the best team with respect to the Eagles last year, with respect to the 2019 49ers. I think this is the best team the Chiefs have played in the playoffs, and I'm not sure it's really close, to be honest with you. I want to get your guys' perspective on that. Brendan, I'll start with you. Is this the hardest game that the Chiefs have faced in the playoffs in the Mahomes era?
That's a really good question. And we sort of talked about this when we were ranking the AFC Championship game opponents. What was it, earlier in the week or last? I guess it was earlier in this week when we actually knew who they were playing in the AFC Championship game. There's probably a good argument for it. I mean, I said it was the most difficult game they've played in an AFC Championship. I still had this one number 1. You could make the argument for the Super Bowl that they lost. Certainly, the Eagles are in the conversation with how well they played last year. Although, to take away from the point, if you wanted to argue for last year's Eagles team, even though it was a shootout, we had found out down the stretch last season that was far from a flawless team. They had a lot of the just disastrous defense that we saw from the Eagles this year. The cracks in that foundation we saw down the stretch last season as well, and we saw it when Patrick Mahomes shredded that defense in Super Bowl 57 too. The one that sticks out to me would have to be Super Bowl 54, the first win of the Mahomes era, because that team was nasty. That defense was unbelievable. And say whatever you want about Jimmy Garoppolo, pretty much whatever you want to say about him is a fair thing to say about him at this stage of time. But that was a really good team. They had really good pieces all over that team. They had a running game that was as good as it ever had been, and almost as good as it has been this year with Christian McCaffrey. Their defense had all these dudes like they have just continued to have over time. That is the only one that I can think of that would be in the conversation with this Baltimore game. And I don't think it even measures up, guys, because I'm going to say, I'll just tell you right now, we're about to give our score predictions here. I think I'm leaning Baltimore in this one. I just think they are the most complete team. I think they've been the best team in the NFL since, I couldn't give you an exact week, but week 7, week 8 maybe of this season. I think they've got the best combination of offense, defense. The advanced metrics love them. They pass the eye test. If you go and break down any of the coaches' film, even if it's just clips on Twitter, or you're an NFL Plus subscriber and you get to look at all the coaches' film yourself, the stuff they run and the way they execute it is honestly remarkable. And I think because of that, there has never been a game, maybe you could argue one of those 2 Bengals games over the previous 2 years in the AFC Championship where you thought, man, it just feels like this team kind of has the Chiefs number and maybe they're able to pick up a win. But very rarely have we ever, during this era of Chiefs football, felt like the Chiefs just may have a peer, that there may be someone who is a contemporary peer for this team, because the Bengals, while they have beaten the Chiefs, they won an AFC Championship game over the Chiefs, I don't think anyone would tell you like, oh, they were pound for pound the better team than Kansas City is. I think Baltimore is actually right there, may be able to make the argument that they are pound for pound a better team. So that's a long-winded way of saying, yes, I do think this is the most challenging game that Kansas City has had in the playoffs. I do think it is the toughest opponent Kansas City has played in the playoffs. And that's why when we get to our keys in a moment, it is going to be very difficult to win this game because they are going to throw so many different and so many complex things at you for a full 60 minutes.
Spencer, is this the best team the Chiefs have played in the last 6 years in the playoffs?
100%. And I think this is the best Ravens team in quite a few years in the playoffs. Obviously, it's shown by Lamar being able to, 1, stay on the field, and 2, you're getting back an all-pro tight end this weekend, and you'll be able to run 2 tight end sets on top of everything else that you run. So that's another thing that they haven't had in the last, 6, 7, 8, 10 weeks, I think, maybe since Andrews has been out.
A stretch in which they've been dominant, even without such an important, integral part of their passing attack. So we're in agreement then that this is a remarkably tough challenge for the Chiefs. But if you know anything about listening to Andy Reid, they always look forward to the challenge. So with that in mind, let's get into our keys to the AFC Championship game. I will start with my first key. We'll go to Brendan and then Spencer after that. My first key to the game, Chiefs have to get big plays from somewhere, and it's really hard to do that against this Ravens defense. They were the top-ranked defense in DVOA, the Football Outsiders proprietary metric. They were the top-ranked defense in the league against deep passes, and they were 5th best in the league at limiting yards after the catch. So where then are the explosive plays for the Chiefs going to come from? Can they come from the ground game? Can Isaiah Pacheco or Clyde Edwards-Helaire pick up big chunks of yardage at a time on the ground? Is it going to have to be Mahomes going supernova, scrambling, creating something downfield with his legs and his vision? One way or another, the Chiefs are going to have to generate these plays because when the offense is operated at its best here the last couple of weeks, they've done it because the explosive play has returned to the offense. They had 8 plays of 20 yards or more against the Bills last week. I don't know that they'll have 8 this week, but they got to have some. They can't have 0. It's going to be hard to come by against this Ravens defense, but they have to find a way to create those explosives. Brendan, what's your number 1 key?
Yeah, I'm going to stick with the Chiefs offense versus that Ravens defense. And we've talked about it a bunch this week as Joe Thuney is questionable, status up in the air, however you want to phrase it, for this game coming up on Sunday. And even if Joe Thuney is out there, but especially if he is not able to go because of this pectoral injury, guys, you have got to protect the interior. The interior for the Baltimore Ravens is so good. We've talked about these guys. Travis Jones, who I was a big fan of coming out of college. Justin Madubuike, I would have called a first-team All-Pro this year with the season he's had. Michael Pierce has been a very solid player for years in Baltimore. That trio, and they like to do different things. They'll bring linebackers up. Spencer and I talked about that a little bit earlier in the week. They like to do different things. They like to use different sorts of disguises to get Roquan Smith and Patrick Queen coming down into the box. They will stunt Kyle Van Noy and the other edge rushers around to the inside. Baltimore is going to try to do a lot of different things. They want to confuse your offense as much as possible. But the number one thing you've got to take care of is protecting the interior. We all know every quarterback in the league will tell you, would you rather face edge pressure or interior pressure? Everyone would rather say, I want pressure off the edge. You don't want someone screaming untouched right into your face, right in your line of sight, makes it harder to throw the ball, speeds up the internal clock a little bit. So you've got to protect inside. Now, if it is Joe Thuney, at the very least, you're saying, hey, we've got our best versus your best. Let's go, even if he's not 100%. If it ends up with Allegretti, well, the Chiefs have said, well, Andy Reid has said, hey, we treat him like a starter. He's not a starter, and he's not a starter for a reason. And that is why I think you've still got to find some sort of way. Maybe that is you're keeping someone in the backfield on every single snap. You're keeping Jet back there or whoever you want pass blocking, staying in there to chip every single snap. I don't know exactly what it is going to take, but that is the thing you have got to neutralize, because if they're able to generate constant pressure up front and can get after Mahomes and get right in his face, might be a long day for this offense.
Spencer, key number one,
My first key is, can the defense step up potentially without Willie Gay, because his status is up in the air. Cole Christensen has played very well this season. Obviously, you have Nick Bolton as another guy, but the one thing that everyone's been targeting all week is Willie Gay to be the spy to Lamar. Lamar obviously can run, but that's not the only weapon in their run game. Justice Hill and Gus Edwards have been pretty good of late, and on top of that, we just mentioned it, on top of the run game, the receiving game's pretty good, and you get Mark Andrews back, so potential there for 2 tight end sets, as I mentioned, or just something that they haven't seen on film in the last 6, 7, 8, however long that Mark Andrews has been out. So I think the defense has to step up. I think we'll obviously, at the way things are trending, Mike Edwards will play. It appears he's cleared concussion protocol, but no Derrick Nottie most likely, is what it kind of seems like. So the defense really needs to step up like it did at the end of last week's game.
It's going to have to be a Drew Tranquill game. This is a game where I think his impact is going to be really important. If the Chiefs are on the field with 2 linebackers, it's probably going to be Bolton and Tranquill. And Tranquill, in the absence of Gay, would be the one who would be tasked, I think, with, if they're going to spy Lamar Jackson, it would be with Tranquill if Gay can't go. And it's not trending in a good direction, I wouldn't say, for Willie Gay, because after being limited the last 2 days, he did not practice today. So certainly some concern about Gay's availability for Sunday. If he can't go, Drew Tranquill becomes pretty important. Second key to the game for me, the secondary has to win their matchups. The Ravens' passing game this year has been less potent against man coverage this season than they have against zone coverage. They've still been good, kind of average, really, against man coverage. It's not like they turn into the Desmond Ridder Falcons or anything throwing the ball against man, but they're not as good against man as they are against zone. And this is a matchup that can favor the Chiefs because L'Jarius Sneed and company have been very effective and really more comfortable all year in man coverage. The risk, as you've outlined, Spencer, is that the return of Andrews and those 2 tight end sets that can ensue from that with Andrews and Isaiah Likely could create some coverage mismatches in English against the linebackers. But I think Steve Spagnuolo is going to stay with a man-heavy scheme on the back end, and you're going to have to win those one-on-ones. Whoever L'Jarius Sneed is matched up against, they got to be on Sneed Island. Whoever's covering Zay Flowers has to keep a hold on Zay Flowers. Whoever is covering Odell Beckham Jr. has to make sure that he doesn't roll back the years in this game. The secondary has to win matchups and try and limit the passing effectiveness of Lamar Jackson and the Ravens to the best of their ability, because it does feel like the Ravens are going to be able to run the ball because they've done it against everybody they've played. Brandon, key number 2.
Key number 2 for me for the Chiefs defense in this one, and I'm going to take you to something that we hear all the time from high school coaches in the city. I was typing this out, and I thought, this sounds like something Bill Arnold would say, head coach of the Hayden Wildcats. Gap sound, integrity sound football in this contest. You've got to be wise to your assignments. You have to know every single snap if you are this Chiefs defense, especially in the front 7, where are you supposed to be? what is your run fit? What is your gap assignment? What hole needs to be filled? What gap needs to be filled? You have to be picture perfect in a game like this because Baltimore's run game is complex. They want to give you a bunch of different looks. They will use a bunch of different guys to run the ball. Obviously, that includes Lamar Jackson, but you also throw in Justice Hill, who's been playing really well. Gus Edwards, maybe we're going to see a little Dalvin Cook in this game, whoever it ends up being. And Cook probably can't do a whole lot for them, but you've got to be in the right gaps. You've got to make sound tackles because if you don't tackle this team, they're going to run all over you in this game. There's obviously a lot that comes with their passing game as well. Dan, you just fleshed all that out right there. And I don't want to completely say stop the run, you win the game. But I can tell you this, if you're not able to stop the run, you are going to end up losing this game. If you don't plug up those holes, you're likely not going to come away with a victory here. You're not going to advance to the Super Bowl. So you've got to be gap sound, assignment sound in this game. Try to make it as difficult as possible for that Ravens run game, especially if you don't have your best space eater in Derrick out there.
Spencer, key number 2.
My second key is this is something going back to last week that we heard Mitch Holthus talk about is the big 3 triangle of Pacheco, Kelce, and Rice on the offense. They obviously stepped up last week, but I think once again, secondary options, including MVS, who did step up twice, 2 big catches last week. Noah Gray needs to be involved more, and potentially Kadarius Toney if he's able to get back on the field this week. They need to find ways to impact the game positively. Last week, we saw Hardman impact the game negatively a couple times, but I think your secondary options with the way that obviously the big 3 for them have, gotten coverages and things, they need to be MVS, Gray, and potentially Toney need to be the ones that are there and open and actually make catches when they're thrown to, because if you can't get your secondary options, you're only as good as what's open with your big 3.
Yeah, those 3 obviously are going to be the focal points, and somebody else will have to step up. And like you said, they got those secondary contributions against Buffalo. Can they get them against Baltimore? All right, guys, time for the big Chief picks. Mine is Chris Jones. What did we learn in Week 18 motivates Chris Jones? Money. That cash.
Straight cash, homie.
Straight cash, homie. He went out and balled out till he got that last sack and made his $1.25 million sack bonus. Chris Jones, by virtue of being a first-team All-Pro, stands to make $1 million if the Chiefs reach the Super Bowl. I think that will highly motivate Chris Jones to be exceptional on Sunday and be the game wrecker for 4 quarters that we have seen him be before in the playoffs. He's got $1 million at stake. It's personal for everybody else. It's financial for Chris Jones in addition. I think that will bring the best out of him.
Yeah, I'm going to go on the offensive side of the ball here. I'm going with Rashee Rice. I think he's going to have a big game because I think Baltimore is going to go very, Bill Belichick here, and you've got to try to take away the best option on the other side. It's hard to take out a running back that way, but if you're saying which pass catcher do we have to eliminate, it's got to be Kelce. He's the greatest tight end of all time. You've got to limit him as much as possible. So I think it's a big opportunity for Rashee Rice, and if he comes through, the Chiefs are in a good spot.
I think another opportunity for Pacheco. He's obviously they were limiting him in practice this week so he could play a lot this weekend. Last weekend, 15 carries, 97 yards, almost got to that 100, that 100 threshold when it comes to yardage on the ground. He scored a touchdown on the ground, had a catch for 14 yards. I think we see him get over 100 yards on the ground and make a few catches through the air, around 130 total yards for the game, and probably 2 touchdowns for him this week in order for them to get the victory.
All right. With that all said and done, it's time to make our predictions for Sunday. This year, the Ravens were plus 131 in scoring differential and 7-2 overall when they played against playoff teams. I'm throwing out Week 18 against the Steelers, a 7-point loss because they didn't play their starters in that game. Mitch Holthus gave us this stat yesterday. I thought this was an absolutely fascinating stat that puts the Ravens in pretty rare company. The only teams in the Super Bowl era to score 25-plus points per game while leading the NFL in both rushing offense and scoring defense. The 1972 Dolphins, the 1985 Bears, and these Ravens. These Ravens are also one of just 2 teams in NFL history to be plus 100 in scoring differential against playoff teams. The other, the 2007 Patriots. The Chiefs are a great team. They're hitting their stride. They have Patrick Mahomes and an elite defense. They can absolutely win this game on Sunday. But the Ravens, they might be more than great. They might be all-time great. And I think that's the difference. Ravens 24, Chiefs 20.
You summed up a lot of how I feel about this game, Dan. I feel stupid counting out Patrick Mahomes here. And Chiefs fans, I have gotten picks for the Chiefs wrong so many times. Maybe this is a good omen for you, but I think Baltimore's best team in the league. I think they've got too much firepower. I'd be worried about the defensive front. Ravens 28, Chiefs 26.
I am going to go with a different perspective here. I do think the Chiefs win 24-21. The Chiefs are playing the Ravens, who have the greatest kicker of all time, essentially, in Justin Tucker. But it's Harrison Butker that comes up big. A field goal to win it as the time runs out.
There you have it. The new guys, we got all three perspectives. We have Ravens win and cover. That's my pick. We have Ravens win, but Chiefs cover from Brendan. We have Chiefs win and cover from Spencer. That's the first time I picked against the Chiefs all year. Brendan, have you picked against the Chiefs all year?
I don't know that I have, actually.
I don't think I have either. That's the first time I've done it. But we want to hear your predictions. Drop them in the YouTube comments. Our YouTube stream is live, our live chat on 580 Sports Talk, our YouTube channel. You can also hit us up on the text line, 785-272-9429. Who's going to win? What's the score? Who's your big Chief? We want to hear from you on this Red Friday edition of 580 Sports Talk. We're going to take our first break. When we come back, we're going to play a little Change My Mind here on 580 Sports Talk.
Just getting started on this Feel Good Friday edition of 580 Sports Talk. Brendan and Spencer with you. Dan will be back here in just a moment. And again, we would love to get your thoughts on Chiefs versus Ravens. We've got one prediction from Vance on YouTube who says Chiefs 24, Ravens 21 in overtime. Harrison Butker is immediately named a Prince of Chiefs Kingdom right after kicking the game-winning field goal. All right, Spencer, you and Vance are on the same page here.
Yeah, I guess we really are. I don't know. I want to see somebody besides Justin Tucker kicking do well and send their team to the Super Bowl. As much as I think the Ravens will probably outplay the Chiefs in the game because they're such a good team, I do think Harrison Butker does come in and get the game winner.
All right, let's get to a round of Change My Mind before we hear from the Kansas City Chiefs. We will hear from Travis Kelce, L'Jarius Sneed, and briefly from Andy Reid coming up here in just a few minutes as well. First things first, change my mind though, Spencer. Now, maybe there's a couple different answers you could give to this question. It's a preview question for my Change My Mind. Do you know what the Chiefs, the Ravens, the 49ers, and the Dolphins all have in common, the 4 teams that are playing this weekend?
They're all top defensive categories.
Well, they're all playing this weekend. That's one of them. But
yeah.
Offensive side of the ball, tight end 1 for each team. Travis Kelce, elite. Mark Andrews, elite. George Kittle, elite. Sam Laporta, just a rookie, but he was an all-pro this season. So change my mind. The 4 best tight ends in the NFL are all playing on Sunday.
I can't change your mind. They are.
The only one that I think you can undeniably I mean, Kelce, duh. George Kittle, I think, is right there as well. I'm a huge Mark Andrews fan. I think he's a star. We just talked about him and where he sits in the pantheon of tight ends just the other day. And then Laporta, again, he's just a rookie, but
rising.
All the other I mean, he's on the rise. He's already an all-pro. Look at who else is in the discussion. Like, who else are you putting up there? I'm not putting Dalton Kincaid up there, another rookie who had a great year, but wasn't all-pro like Sam Laporta. I just think that it was an incredibly deep tight end draft this year. I loved Laporta. I had him as my first or second favorite guy on the board at that spot, and he has paid dividends right away. Maybe you're a huge TJ Hawkinson fan and you want to give me that name instead. I could listen to the argument, but no, I think these are the 4 best tight ends in the NFL all playing this week.
Yeah, I'll go alongside of the teams playing this week. How about quarterbacks when it comes to success so far into their career? I think you have to go Pat Mahomes first, number 1, and then you have to go in their short time of their career when it comes to what they were expected to do in their career. You have to go Brock Purdy, Jared Goff, and then Lamar. Only Lamar last because he hasn't done anything in the postseason yet, but Brock Purdy not expected to do anything at all. And whereas if it wasn't for him injuring his LCL or whatever it was in the playoffs last year, you don't know where they could have gone. And Jared Goff has won a Super Bowl, or has been in a Super Bowl.
Has been in a Super Bowl, yeah. So it's your ranking there of
accomplishments,
success, accomplishments. See, I actually had this discussion with, or a similar type of discussion with Fletcher Terrell, the color commentator for Washburn football, when he and I were doing a game this past fall. And we were talking about Aaron Rodgers, and he said, was he really that great in Green Bay? And I said, Fletch, what do you mean, was he really that great? And he said, he only won 1 Super Bowl. If he was that great, wouldn't he have won more? I said, yeah, but there's more to football than that. There's lots of regular season games. The regular season is the majority of everything. He did win plenty of playoff games, even if it wasn't always the most important one in the NFC Championship game, save for that one time. So I have a bit of a different view of this, and I do think regular season accomplishments do mean something. I think that they should mean something. So Mahomes is first, number 1 with a bullet, no matter what. If you're weighing postseason success with regular season success and you're going to weight those somewhat evenly, there's more things you can achieve in a regular season. There's more important things you can achieve when you get to the postseason. Man, I still think I'm taking, I think I'm going to go in that regard. Mahomes, Lamar, Purdy, Goff. I think that's the way I would rank those if you want to give just sort of big picture total success. And the reason why, because you're right. I mean, Purdy was not expected to do this. I didn't think Brock Purdy was going to be any good. And I don't remember, to go and delete some old tweets, but I seem to remember making fun of the pick when he was the last selection of the draft going to San Francisco, because I loved to slander that dude when he was at Iowa State and make fun of him and Matt Campbell and, the greatest Iowa State team ever, ended up winning, 8 games the year after the COVID season. So I think it's incredibly impressive what he's done. Again, analytical darling, all the advanced stats. Love what Brock Purdy did this year. He just keeps winning. That is important. I think he is a better version of Jimmy Garoppolo than Jimmy Garoppolo, which, Jimmy won a bunch of games there too. I think Brock Purdy's got the potential to be better than that. Goff, you're right. He has played in a Super Bowl, but he was expected to do that as the first overall pick, and he was cast aside from Los Angeles for a reason. And he has also presided over a 3-13 season as a quarterback with one of these teams. And I know the Lions, structurally around him weren't all that great, but I think that's something you have to take into consideration too. So I would reorder that Mahomes, Lamar, Purdy, Goff, if you take everything into consideration.
Yeah, I was just taking into consideration success when it comes to not necessarily numbers, but accolades.
Okay.
Like,
Fair enough.
Lamar's won
Fair
an
enough.
MVP or won 2 MVPs, but he hasn't performed in the playoffs. That's my biggest takeaway from all this. We might have another change my mind if he does, in fact, have one. I don't know. Do you have a change my mind over there?
Talking to me?
Yeah.
I just walked back in the studio. I had this opinion. You guys talked about NFL coaches at all? I don't want to do something that you guys haven't done. Step on you a little bit. Okay. I had this take when he was fired. And now that the coaching search this year seems to have moved on without him, I will ask you guys again. I think this is a reset of a previous change my mind, but change my mind. Bill Belichick is done as an NFL head coach.
I have nothing to say to that because I think he is done. I was going to make that my change my mind today, but I decided to go somewhere else.
Well, thank goodness you did.
So he's not going to end up with a job this year, I don't think, because he's not going to Seattle. And it by all accounts, it sounds like Washington is getting Ben Johnson. Barring
except for
crazy.
Except for crazy. Do you remember like midway through November, there was saying that Josh Harris was going to pull off a coaching trade or something like that and get Bill Belichick?
Hey, if he wanted to make a big splash and go after Belichick,
but they haven't even talked to him, so it's not going to happen.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what it boils down to.
I think he'll be on ESPN.
He's going to end up with a coach. Well, that's certainly possible too. I think he is going to coach again, though, because, and while this is a cynical way to look at it, like, he's old. Spencer and I talked about this yesterday during the 4:00 hour when it looked like, after the Falcons hired Raheem Morris, okay, that was probably the last great chance for Bill Belichick. He's old, and if he's going to bring that massive baggage with him as well in the form of Matt Patricia or Joe Judge or Josh McDaniels or whoever else, that is obviously a demerit against him. But teams get so desperate, and meddlesome owners and desperate general managers and desperate fan bases, sometimes they are willing to go and take a big swing. They're going to go after someone. And even though Belichick will be another year older, another year removed from the game, I do think someone is going to try to bring him on, because I think there's also an element of some team out there, some owner out there is going to want to be the team with whom he breaks the all-time wins record, because he's still, 26 shy of Don Shula, if I'm not mistaken. So I do think it is certainly possible that he gets a job next year. So I don't think he's done yet. I think desperation is going to set in for someone. By the way, Dan, since you just walked in, because we'll get your thought on that in a second, the one I had earlier, the 4 tight ends, all really good, either undeniably elite or an all-pro this year. So change my mind. The 4 tight ends playing on championship weekend are the 4 best tight ends in the NFL.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. We're talking about likely, right? We're not talking about Mark Andrews, talking about likely, because likely might be in that conversation by this time. That dude is a freak, man. He's an unbelievable athlete, and he really came on with Andrews' injury, gave him a chance to shine. But yeah, Kelce still, he's got the title belt until somebody takes it from him, and boy, Sunday as well by the Chiefs with their respective injuries. So Joe Thuney hadn't missed a game all year, didn't practice all week, not going to be able to make it to Sunday. Willie Gay listed as questionable. Again, he went from limited the first 2 days, Wednesday, Thursday, to not practicing today. He is listed as questionable. So is Isaiah Pacheco, who was limited today. Mike Edwards was a full participant in practice today. If he clears concussion protocol by Sunday, it's likely that he'll go, but he is listed as questionable. Sky Moore and Prince Tega Winogo are also listed as out because they haven't cleared IR yet. Kadarius Toney is questionable with his hip injury. No other injury designations for any of the other Chiefs. But Joe Thuney missing out for Sunday. That is a big miss for the Chiefs in this one. We'll have more about that later on in the show. We're going to take a break here. When we come back, we're going to hear from Andy Reid, who didn't talk for long, and we're going to hear from Travis Kelce, who talked a little longer. That's coming up. You're listening to 580 Sports Talk. 2:42 on 580 Sports Talk. Brendan, Dan, Spencer with you. If you're watching the 580 Sports Talk YouTube stream, there's Spencer. He ran away from us for a little bit.
We got to figure this camera out.
it was frustrating. That's why I had it where I had it all that time. You know, you traded off like the straight on view for at least you knew it wasn't going to fall off the top of the computer. So,
the only thing
swings and roundabouts.
I just needed over like less like 6 inches.
Or you could move.
I mean, yeah, but it doesn't center. I like being centered in the console.
No, I totally understand.
As a board op, I like to be centered in the console.
Yes, as our producer, you do need to have the full range of motion. You've got things to the left and things to the right, and things in the middle that you got to be in the middle of, and that camera doesn't quite get there. It's a whole thing. Anyway, that's a little too inside baseball for you folks. We are looking for your predictions on the AFC Championship game. Text them in 785-272-9429. Hit us up in the YouTube comments. Already got one in from Vance. We'll look for yours as well. Myself and Brendan are on the Ravens, and Spencer's picking the hometown Chiefs. So we want to hear what you think. How's your confidence level as a Chiefs fan going into a 6th consecutive AFC Championship game? Andy Reid and others spoke to the media today. Andy Reid has been speaking to the media a lot, so he didn't have a ton to say, but we thought we would let you hear what the Big Red had to say at One Arrowhead Drive today.
With the neck spasm, didn't practice today. Sky Moore, Derrick Nottie, and Joe Tooney. Everybody else worked. Look for the challenge of playing the Ravens again. We know, obviously we know they're a very well coached and good football team. So look forward to going down there after a good week's work and having a good game. With that, time's yours.
Joe Tooney, how much of it is pain management versus?
The pain that's not the issue. It's just being able to function with it. Yeah.
Have you ruled him out yet?
There's a chance. We just have to what?
Naughty too.
Yeah. They'll put it out. I haven't had a chance to meet with Rick and do all that. So.
Coach, I know you try to keep even keel throughout all of this stuff. You get a feel for your team right now, kind of where they are emotionally ready for this game?
Yeah, you're down to 2 teams, right? So they're excited to go play. They know they're a good football team and excited for the challenge. That's why we all do this thing. So.
Yeah, and that's the extent of what Andy Reid had to say, which was not confirming what was just recently confirmed within the last 3 minutes, that Joe Tooney is not going to play, that Derrick Nottie is not going to play. Both have been ruled out by the Chiefs for Sunday. So that's Andy Reid and what little it was that he had to say. Let's hear from TE1. Travis Kelce held court with the media today. Yes, there were Taylor Swift questions, but there were way more football questions. So let's hear from Travis.
Travis, obviously you've been straight to attention all your career, but I do wonder as you look back at the last year, have you felt that intensify in any ways off the field?
I mean, I'd be silly to say that I didn't notice it go up. I think the Super Bowl helped that, and obviously how I live my off-field life definitely helps out. But I brought this upon myself, and I do enjoy having fun with it all. And the biggest thing is making sure my focus is right here in this building.
That's the flip side, I guess. And what are the challenges to that? Because I imagine, it's just energy and all kinds of things that you have to work out.
It's just outside noise, dealing with everyone else's perspective of things. You hear the media throughout the year if we're not having success. Maybe throw it out there that I wasn't focused or that the team isn't focused on certain things. And if you're in this building, you know exactly what's going on. And so you got to compartmentalize what you're hearing and make sure that you're staying on task and giving everybody in the building and on that team the right perception when you walk in that building.
Just one last thing. Is it the sort of thing you and Taylor have talked about how to deal with that? How you deal with that pop?
The only thing we've talked about is as long as we're happy, we can't listen to anything that's outside noise. That's all that matters.
You mentioned the outside noise. A lot of talk about you may not have any more left in the tank. How does it make you feel? Does that make you want to go even harder?
Yeah, I mean, it's a challenge to find new ways to have success, and I think that's what this year has brought for me is that obstacle and figuring out how I can get the best out of myself, how I can figure out how I can get the best out of my teammates, and all at the same time being a great leader, bringing that energy, showing for the young guys, the type of determined mindset you got to have week in, week out. And you know what, man? I love that challenge. I was talking to my brother the other day on the podcast. There's certain things that give you challenges in life that you just got to be appreciative that you're getting tested, because not everybody gets those opportunities, especially when you get to do it with a group of men and women that they can rally together with and really, prove yourselves what you're made of.
Through that, do you find something different in yourself? Have you found something different?
1,000%. And hopefully you'll see that tomorrow or on Sunday.
Speaking of finding new ways to have success and taking those challenges head on, has playing on the road actually helped a little bit in terms of the juice, the adrenaline that you feel before?
I'll tell you what, there's nothing like playoff football. You could feel that same energy the week before against Miami at Arrowhead. It's just it doesn't matter who you are, where you play. If you rally together with the men and women that you got and the team that you got, like I said, you can play anywhere you want to, and you got to bring that juice no matter who's in the crowd.
It's a little bit sweeter though with 70,000 people.
I don't know. Winning the Arrowhead's pretty damn good, but hopefully I'll find out on Sunday what it feels like to win the AFC Championship on the road.
Travis, how important is playoff experience, do you feel like?
I mean, it's vital. It's vital, but at the same time, you can't depend on it. You just got to be able to, for the most part, it's just situational awareness, right? It's being big enough for the moment, not letting the moment get too big for you, and just going out there and playing with a certain determined mindset, and not letting any of that clutter get in between. It's definitely a luxury to have it, but at the same time, you can't depend on that kind of stuff.
Just considering your relationship off the field, how grateful are you that kind of your football journey brought you and Pat together, and now you can kind of be able to accomplish?
Man, it's been a hell of a ride up to this point, baby. And I don't feel like getting off the roller coaster anytime soon. But it's definitely I've been fortunate that 1-5 landed here. And on top of that, has been willing to grow not only with me, but with Coach Reid and this offense and trying to build this thing to where it is today. And hopefully we just keep ascending in the direction that we want to go.
Travis, how do you
Last three, Sam, Nate, and
How do you put in perspective this streak of reaching the AFC Championship streak, 6 streak? The longevity.
Perspective? I ain't thinking about a single one I already accomplished. I'm thinking about this one on Sunday, and I want it more than I ever wanted one in my life.
Why is that?
Just you build it up, the different challenges we've had this year, the type of team that we have, the camaraderie we have in that locker room. I want it for the guys next to me. It's a good feeling, but we got to get the job done.
Travis, speaking of Patrick, what has impressed you most about how he's approached this postseason and obviously his performance in the first 2 games?
I think it elevates. He's done what I've tried to do year in, year out, and I haven't been as successful as he has, but answer the bell, answer the challenges that are presented to you, and get excited about that. I think that's something that we can all kind of take away from what Coach Reid has been as such a great leader to all of us in life. And when I'm speaking for the team, that is that he challenges us with the right mentality and the right determined mindset week in, week out. And I haven't found that challenge off the field. I only find it every single day I walk into this building. And I think that's one of the things that Pat's taken on like a pro since the minute he was in this building was, all right, I'm not playing my first year, but how do I get better? What's that challenge? And then it just keeps going up and up and up. And the naysayers can say what they want, but he's playing his best football right now. And you're seeing why he's the best quarterback in the league.
Travis, you guys obviously had different teams throughout this big long run, right? What do you like about this team? What makes this team special to you?
We're resilient. We grew together. You saw this. You saw the struggles. You saw the growth. I think that's what makes us special. But you just come into that locker room, you'll see the chemistry. You'll see how much we want it for the guy next to us, and that's when you know you got a real good team.
So that's Travis Kelce. That is what Travis Kelce had to say earlier today at One Arrowhead Drive, reflective. And I really liked that the reporter asked the follow-up when Kelce asked, said, I want this one more than I've ever wanted one. I love that there was a follow-up, and I love that he asked why. That's a great follow-up question. And Kelce said it's everything they've been through this year would make this one all the sweeter. And I think he means as a team, but I also think that there's an element of what he's been through personally this year that would make it mean a great deal as well. I want to get to this real quick. We got a couple minutes here before the top of the hour, but I saw this tweet from James Palmer while we were playing the Kelce audio, and it's a response to the Chiefs injury report that has ruled out, again, Joe Thuney will not play. He is ruled out with his pectoral injury. Derrick also ruled out. James Palmer of NFL Network tweeted, the Chiefs never believed Joe Thuney was going to be able to go. It's a big loss. No one has played more snaps this season than Thuney. The interior dominance and the communication on the offensive line takes a big hit. I think I agree with half of that because Joe Thuney is an all-pro left guard. I think he's the best pass-blocking left guard in the NFL. I think he's just a terrific player. And you do downgrade when you go from a first-team all-pro to that player's backup. But as far as the communication goes, maybe at another position I might be worried. But Nick Allegretti's been a Chief longer than even Joe Thuney. He's been around. He started Super Bowl 55. He's been around. And when he came in, he performed admirably in the divisional round game against Buffalo. I really think that, yes, there's a downgrade in terms of the caliber player you're putting in there, but I wouldn't expect the communication to suffer. I
to handle these sorts of issues as anybody in the NFL because of who is on this, who the other guys who are starting on this roster, let me phrase it that way, because of the coaching staff, they are uniquely, I think, adaptable to issues like this. You also have to factor in, and I think this is probably where we should start with every argument we make or every point we make about, well, can the Chiefs do this? Can the Chiefs survive this specific thing? You know what the Chiefs have? They have the monkey wrench. They have the skeleton key. They have the one thing that nobody else has, and that is a quarterback who can do literally everything, who can do everything and can do it better than anybody else. So anything like that you add, and I don't mean to diminish any other points that are made here by you or anyone else, Dan, but I think that's the number one place we have to go with this. And I feel like I'm steering into the point that Bomani Jones made on his podcast today. We're like, hey, we're talking about, like, we don't talk about Patrick Mahomes enough to the point where he's actually underrated. Like, that fixes the problem. And I think it's going to be difficult for the Chiefs. And you heard me just earlier this hour pick the Ravens to win. But the number one fix the Chiefs have is 15 is throwing the ball. And unless the entire offensive line is out, I still think that's probably going to be enough for the Chiefs to at least contend.
2:00 hour in the books. In the 3:00 hour, we'll talk to Matt Derrick, get his thoughts, and we'll preview the NFC title game. That's coming up on 580 Sports Talk. Let's get it. 580 Sports Talk, hour number 2 on this Red Friday. The gang's all here. We're just in different places. Dan Lucero, Spencer Dupuis in studio. Brendan Dworzinski's magical MIAA mystery tour continues. Can you say what hotel you're at, or is it one of those where you're going to do the Mitch Hedberg bit? I can't say what hotel I'm at, but there are 2 trees involved.
Well, I'm at the Days Inn. I was exactly trying to come up with some way to phrase that.
That's not a good one. You can't really play with that. I used to do a show on the road a lot when I traveled in my days in West Central Nebraska. I would travel quite a bit, and I had a show that would come on at noon on the station I was on in North Platte, Nebraska. And a lot of the times I would set the show up by telling people, folks, I'm live from a hotel room in Lincoln or Omaha, wherever the hell I was. I'm live from a hotel room in Lincoln, and I can't tell you which one it is, but it is super, and there are 8 of them.
I was very prepared to spend my exact night in that particular hotel, in fact. And then I read the Google reviews and thought, what if I actually never go within 3 miles of this hotel instead? So that is how I ended up where I am.
Okay, now I need to know what town you're in, because this may be, if you shot up north to Kearney last night, then I may have been in that Super 8 before.
Brother, I did drive up to Kearney last night. I did, and let me tell you something. We've all seen fog. We've all been in a fog, literally or figuratively, right? So last night, I made the last minute call. I thought, you know what? I got to get my pregame interviews done beforehand. And the men were staying in Hayes after the Fort Hays State game, and the women were going straight up to Kearney. And I thought, you know what? I've got to do the show. I'm just going to drive up to Kearney. I don't mind being up late after a drive. That's fine. And then Friday night, when everybody from the Washburn men and women get up here, I'll do my interviews. It'll be good. I don't have to move my stuff in extra time. It'll be all fine. It was so foggy. I could not believe it. Like, I was white knuckling driving for a good portion of it. And it was like, as I got up toward the state line, it was okay. I thought it had started to thin out, like around Alma, Nebraska. Thought I was doing okay. And then within about 60 to 70 miles of Kearney, the worst fog I have ever experienced in my entire life. I could not see a damn thing. I was legitimately scared while driving. I made it, which is good, which is important. Yes. There was almost no one else on Highway 183 last night, but ooh, buddy, I was not feeling good one bit about that drive last night. I'm just glad I made it in eventually.
So I do have some familiarity, as I've explained, with West Central Nebraska and making that drive. And yeah, some of the foggiest driving I've ever encountered has been like late night even on I-80, even where they've got like, but by the exits where you've got like overhead lights. Yeah, man, that fog can be brutal. So I know what you were going through, and I don't envy it. And I'm glad that you made it safely. And I hope that you said hello to Holdridge as you passed through.
I did. It was very nice to. In fact, Holdridge is the town that I couldn't see. I knew I was in the town because I could see it on the map. I could not see. There was like a park next to the road that I had to turn on at one point. Couldn't see it. Couldn't see a single thing. Couldn't see any of the houses, the businesses. Yeah.
Home of the Dusters. I've called a couple of games at Holdridge High School. Again, this was a previous life. Spencer, I'm a rambling man. You may not know that about me yet. I've been around, brother.
Yeah. I can tell.
By the way, speaking of your time in Nebraska, Dan.
Yes.
So I've been to Kearney before. The first time I was over there was this fall. I filled in for Jake doing Washburn football, and Fletch and Trenton and I were up in Kearney for Washburn football. But it was in, out, boom, get to the stadium, get out of the stadium, get home. So I pull in a different way this time because I didn't get in on 80. I was taking, state highways and stuff to get there last night.
Yeah, you would have gone up like 44.
Yeah, exactly. So as I'm coming up 44 and I cross over the interstate to actually get into Kearney, first thing I see, if you want to hop on 80 West, is North Platte. And I thought, oh, hey, Dan's old stomping grounds, 97 miles. And I thought, 97 more miles? Good Lord.
Yeah.
Oh, my. Like, I've lived out here in Topeka, Lawrence, that area, long enough to like be familiar with small towns and being away from cities and what small town life theoretically is like and all that. Man, 97 miles from the next biggest city being Kearney is a long way.
You know what we call Kearney and North Platte? A short drive.
Yeah, I believe that. I believe that.
That was a short drive. So, yes, I give my regards to the Vieira Wireless Center and the one library where I did my game prep for the one night I called junior hockey at the Vieira Wireless Center. I'm sure I've told that story off the air. Maybe one day I'll tell it on the air. Maybe I'll do story time with Dan sometime, and I'll tell you about my hockey play-by-play experience. Very nearly got that job. I was very nearly the voice of the Tri-City Storm. But again, that's
I believe I heard that story on the way home from the Big 12 championship game. I believe that's when I heard that story.
That's another story for another time. This is a Red Friday edition of 580 Sports Talk. The Chiefs and the Ravens in the AFC Championship game. 2 of your 3 hosts are going with the home team, and we don't mean the Chiefs. We mean the home team in the game. I think the Ravens are just a little better than the Chiefs and might be historically great. They've got some numbers that suggest historical greatness is the level that they have achieved this year. So I'm going with the Ravens. Brendan is taking the Ravens, but likes the Chiefs to cover the 3.5 point spread. Spencer not only likes the Chiefs to cover, he thinks we're a bunch of idiots, and he can't believe he's learned one thing in being here 2 weeks, and that is you don't pick against Patrick Mahomes. Is that lesson 1 for you, Spencer?
Maybe.
Don't pick against 15.
You know, Spencer, I know you're not a huge pro wrestling guy. That's what Mick Foley back in the day would call a cheap pop. Like everyone else is picking against him. And no, I'm going with the hometown team, the Kansas City Chiefs. That's the old cheap pop.
Yeah, exactly. So those are our opinions. We want to hear yours. 785-272-9429 is the text line. We also have the live YouTube live chat. If you are watching us on YouTube, we appreciate you watching on our YouTube channel, 580 Sports Talk. We see that more and more of you are checking that out of late. And we really appreciate you being along on the YouTube stream and invite you to jump into the comments because we love to hear from you throughout the show. There is another game on Sunday. Do you remember anything about the last 5? That's not a fair question because your favorite team played in at least one of the last 5 NFC Championship games. So I'll start with my own experience here. When you have any sort of attachment to what goes on in one of the conference championship games, it doesn't matter if you kick it off first or if it kicks off in the primetime slot. You can't remember a thing about it. Like, I do not remember, legitimately. I can tell you this. I have been here and covering the Chiefs for the last 5 AFC Championship games. I've been wrapped up in it. I've been involved in it. I am married to a Chiefs fan. She is wrapped up in it. I don't remember a thing about the last 5 NFC Championship games. Not one thing, not one detail. I remember one, but I can't give you anything more than that.
So you don't remember that the 49ers last year were down to Christian McCaffrey as their quarterback?
I do remember they tried to throw a pass with Christian McCaffrey. I do remember that. It's easier to remember if they're the first game, if they're the appetizer, but if the Chiefs are the first game, when the Chiefs have been the first game, which they will be on Sunday, which they were in 2021, which they were in 2019. They won in 2019. They lost in 2021. I couldn't tell you the first thing about the second game of the day because that first game just drains you. I mean, if you're fired up for the second game, the first one serves as a little bit of an appetizer before the main course. So maybe you remember a little bit more of it. But so I don't know if that's good or bad that the Chiefs are the first game on Sunday. But I can tell you this: that's not the game that feels like the appetizer. This is the game that feels like the main course. I know they rotate it year in, year out, but if ever there was a year they should have said, nah, man, we're putting one of these games on purpose in prime time. Wouldn't it be Patrick Mahomes versus Lamar Jackson?
Should be.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's how do you not? Best team in the league, MVP of the league, literally Patrick Mahomes, team that's the reigning Super Bowl champions, back again, 6th straight AFC Championship game. I mean, it's got all the narrative. It's got all the storyline. You're right, though. I told you about it just the other day when we were looking back on that Chiefs-Bills AFC Championship game from the 2020 season. I don't remember anything. I remember one play from that game. I remember Josh Allen getting sacked for a loss of 12 yards and then having a hissy fit on the ground. Like, I do not remember a single thing from the rest of that game because the Packers played in the 2:00 game and lost. Like, I do not recall anything else other than that one sack and the fact that the Chiefs won.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Like when you have, especially when it's your team, your favorite team, so you have that level of an emotional tie. And I hate to do this to you, Spencer, but you literally don't know what that's like, and I'm sorry that that's the case. I realized as I was setting the table. I realized as I was setting the table for this conversation, the last time the Washingtons have played in a conference championship game, Spencer was not alive.
Yeah.
Had your parents met in 1991?
Potentially met. They definitely weren't married.
So it's been
I know that for a fact.
It's been a long time for the Fighting Washingtons of the Gridiron. And I don't mean for that to sound mean. I'm just
that's facts.
Yeah, I'm pointing it out that you don't know. Like Brendan and I have both kind of gone through it from the fan perspective, and now we all get to go through it from the media perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Fun fact, though, the last time the Washingtons were in it was also the last time the Lions were in it.
This is true, and that's a great segue into this year.
That.
He's catching on. The NFC Championship game, the Detroit Lions and the San Francisco 49ers. The Detroit Lions, in some circles, they are being called America's team. They have never, ever been to a Super Bowl. Their last NFL championship, Bobby Lane, Tobin wrote in 1957, the last time that the Lions ever raised a league championship banner. They have the opportunity. They are 7-point underdogs going to San Francisco to take on the 49ers.
I got something to say about this. We were talking, you were just saying about remembrance of the last few NFC championship games. You would say the Lions are the Cinderella, right?
Yes. You're a touchdown underdog. You're definitely Cinderella. Yeah.
So if the Cinderella story gets written, it would be 3 straight years that Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers cannot get out of the AFC championship or NFC championship game to make it to the Super Bowl.
Boy, that'd be delicious.
That's just crazy to think about. Like, I forgot they were I knew they were in last year, but the year before against the Rams, I forgot they were.
Yeah, that's right. And they were the road team in that game. They were the road team last year as well. They get the home field advantage for this game. The thing that I think is most interesting, the most interesting question I think about how this game might unfold, which team needs to play from in front more? Is it the 49ers or is it the Lions? Because that has been the criticism of the 49ers all season long, is that they are not built to play from behind. And we wondered if Brock Purdy was built to lead his team back from a deficit. And, well, we just saw him do it last week, lead a game-winning drive in the playoffs at home and beat the Packers. So now we've seen Purdy do it, but do we trust him to do it again if his team falls behind on this stage? Or is it a bigger deal for Detroit to get an early lead and for them to play from in front? Because it's been a question we've asked about Jared Goff at varying times in his career. Is he good enough to lead a team back from a deficit? So I'll throw that question to you guys. Who do you think most needs to play this game with the advantage?
I feel like it's the 49ers because Brock Purdy, I feel like this season has gotten into some bad situations where when they're losing, he has to force some things and they just don't go his way. And the 49ers end up losing the game.
I think you actually look at this from the head coaching perspective. If the Lions are playing from behind, you know what they're going to do differently than usual when they're playing from in front or in a dead even game? Nothing. You know exactly what you're going to get. You are going to get balls to the wall, aggressiveness from Dan Campbell, Ben Johnson, and from Aaron Glenn, their defensive play caller as well. They are going to be aggressive. They are going to attack you, whether that is defensively putting pressure on, whether that is offensively trying to spread things out, going forward on 4th and short, 4th and medium, hell, maybe even 4th and long, depending on where they are in the field in the second half. They are going to do that all the time, and it doesn't always pay off. But you know exactly what you're going to get. You are going to get a team that is going to put the pressure on you as much as possible. Kyle Shanahan, big games in tight moments when things are on the line and he's got to come up with a big decision. How often does he make the right call?
Not real often.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly. And you don't know exactly what you're going to get because in theory, that should also be a team that should be aggressive. Anytime it's 4th and 5 or fewer, if you're San Francisco, given the offensive line they have, which is decent, but the playmakers they've got, the best running back in the NFL, maybe the most underrated receiver in the league, I think, in Brandon Ayuk, who I think is an awesome player. Deebo Samuel can do literally everything. You've got an elite tight end. You should have confidence at all times running or throwing the ball, given what they have told us, what they think about Brock Purdy and what Kyle Shanahan thinks of Brock Purdy. They should always have confidence in their offense. And yet, historically speaking, Kyle Shanahan has not been that guy. He has turtled in the big moments. He has not always shown that same level of aggressiveness. He has shown a propensity to change things up and not for the best and to throw things off balance. And again, not in a good way. So I think it's San Francisco that's got to play from ahead, because if I'm the 49ers, and you guys know what I think about Kyle Shanahan at this point, but if I'm the 49ers, I'm thinking I don't want to be in a position where I have to make those tough decisions, because historically it has not worked for Kyle Shanahan. He has pulled the wrong string far more often than he has pulled the right one in these big moments.
And it's not just making the wrong decision, it's making the overly conservative decision in a close game.
Mm-hmm.
Punting, taking a field goal in a 4th and short, those kinds of negative win probability added decisions. Kyle Shanahan will make those the conservative call more often than we know Dan Campbell will. That's why I think the longer this game stays close, the more it might favor the Lions, the more it might favor the team that's willing to go for it on 4th and 1 from their own 40-yard line. The team that's more willing to go for a touchdown on 4th and goal from the 5 instead of just settle for a field goal. I do think that the Lions have that bit of an edge in terms of coaching, in terms of game theory. The question is going to be, can they keep it close long enough for that to matter? I would be 0% convinced that they could, but I am a little worried about what this 49er offense is going to look like without Deebo Samuel. They've got other guys that can make a lot of plays, but we've seen how big a hole Deebo's absence can leave in that offense. And now they've had a week to kind of plan around it, unlike the Green Bay game where he went out early. So I think that can mitigate some of Samuel's absence, but I do wonder about that from the 49ers. That's my main concern for them as far as this game goes, because I do think they're better. I do think they're going to win. But again, the longer it stays close, the more I think Coach Kneecap Biter might be the one to pull the right lever and might be the one to make the aggressive call that will make the difference between winning and losing.
Out of curiosity, do you know over the last, let's say, 2 seasons what the 49ers record is without Deebo Samuel?
I do not, but I know it's not good.
So I'm actually going to give you, all right, I'll give you the last 2 seasons. This season, they're 0-2. They've only played 2 games in the regular season without him. They went 0-2 in those games. They had those 2 back-to-back goose eggs, in fact, when they played against Minnesota on the road and then home against Cincinnati. They scored 17 points in each of those games, and they lost by 5, and then they lost by 14. You go back to last year, however, 2022, they went 4-0 without Deebo in the lineup. He was inactive for 4 games. They beat the Rams. They blew out a crappy Rams team. Then they beat the Seahawks, the Washington team. Well, I don't even remember. Was it Commanders last year too? I don't even remember at this point. And then they knocked off the Raiders on the road as well. So it's kind of hard to draw a trend from that. But I think given who they are playing, and again, going up against it, I mean, this is the crazy guy in the knife fight. Like, this is the team in Detroit that is going to walk in. They're not scared about getting hit. They're just going to slice and slice and slice, and they're going to go down swinging. Against that kind of team, that would lead me to believe, and given the makeup of their offense and how they have struggled without Deebo so far this season. And look, they didn't look all that great offensively for 3 quarters against Green Bay either. Eventually, Joe Barry showed up and did Joe Barry things. But I do think that that's going to make things a lot more difficult for San Francisco. I'm with you. I think they're the better team. I'm going to pick them to win, but I would not be remotely surprised if Detroit ended up winning this game. I think that aggressiveness works in their favor, especially against a team that's shorthanded.
And I think 49ers might be in luck, according to their athletic or their beat reporter for The Athletic. He said he watched Deebo Samuel during the first 2 periods of practice. He caught 2 balls over his head. Otherwise looked like he was fine. It's looking very much like he'll play on Sunday. The question is, will be contact. How much with his shoulder will he be able to take?
Yeah, Josh Dubow of the Associated Press just tweeted about 20 minutes ago that he is thinking that Samuel looks like he will be good to go. There'll be a official designation after practice. Obviously, the 49ers on Pacific time, so it'll be a while till we see that. We might even be off the air by the time that comes out. But I'd expect he'd be questionable, but if he can go, that's a big deal. And if he can't go, I think that's a big deal too. But I think it is something that the 49ers, having had a week to prepare for that possibility, will be able to overcome in a different way than they struggled to overcome it against Green Bay. So I'm on the Niners, and I'm going to say they cover. 28-20, San Francisco feels about right for me. Brendan, you like the Niners? Do you think they cover the 7?
No, I'm going to take Detroit against the spread here. Give me 27-23 as the final score in this one. I do think Detroit is going to keep it close. I'll call my shot here and say that some of that aggressiveness ends up hurting them down the stretch, and we're going to get the same kind of babble on Twitter about how, this was so bad and why did Dan Campbell do this? Because that's what Dan Campbell does. Have you watched this team all year? That's what he ends up doing. And a lot of times it works out. Sometimes it doesn't. I have a feeling that against a team with this much talent, it might not work out in this game, but I do think Detroit keeps it close.
There's going to be some discourse about this game, about game theory, about fourth down decisions, things like that. We will have some capital D discourse. It will not be enjoyable, I suspect, but we will get some capital D discourse. Spencer, who you got?
I have the 49ers, not only because I think they're going to win this game. I think it's going to be 28-21, a close game. But I do think the Lions are out, which means next Wednesday in Virginia, they're going to be introducing Mr. Ben Johnson as the Commanders' head coach.
This is all very much geared toward one outcome for you.
Because
the
longer I wait, I'm questioning who they really should get as their next head coach with everybody they've been able to interview.
Can I interest you in a lightly used Dan Quinn?
No, I think he's going to be your head coach.
No, don't put that evil on me, Ricky Bobby. No, absolutely not. All three of us on the Niners in Sunday's NFC Championship game. If you're a Chiefs fan, you'll be put through the emotional ringer 3 hours leading up to it. And you may not remember any of what happens in the NFC Championship game on Monday. So we'll recap it for you and be as helpful as we can on Monday's edition of the show. Right now, though, we're going to take a break. When we come back, hand up. Time for some mea culpas on Second Thought. That's next on 580 Sports Talk. Time for a round of On Second Thought, where we take a look back at a take, either recently or an old one, that may have aged like milk. Spencer, you got an On Second Thought for this week?
I do. You weren't there. I think it was last Friday after you'd left to go call basketball.
Gallivant around the high school gyms of the capital city, yes.
While we were at the casino, we talked about KU's game the next day.
Yeah.
At West Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
And I said this West Virginia team just wasn't there yet. That they maybe come a month they would be good. But they did go and upset KU on Saturday.
Yeah.
So that's my on second thought. I underestimated them a month in advance.
It's the most they have looked probably all season long. They win their game earlier this week. I legitimately don't remember.
I don't know.
I'm going to go and look it up. In the meantime, Brendan, what was your on second thought for this week?
By the way, Dan, no, they lost by 13 points to UCF.
Get them out of my face.
My on second thought, I have said for many years to not pay attention to the TV daytime sports talking heads, the Skip Baylesses, the First Take, and whatever Nick Wright is doing. It said, don't listen to those. They're terrible. Those people are acting. All of the arguments are in bad faith, etc. But the reason this is my on second thought is because I just can't quit Stephen A. Smith. Because every time I think he has said something too stupid for words, he has said something that should make you throw away your TV and unsubscribe from your cable provider so you don't get ESPN anymore. He does things like today when on his podcast, YouTube show, whatever it is, where someone asked him, which Pokemon starter are you choosing? And he, pronounced all of their names incorrectly, but then picked Charmander because he said they have the same forehead. I can't quit it. It's just unbelievable content. It's like a couple of months ago when someone called in and asked him about Cars and Lightning McQueen winning the Piston Cup, and he went on like a 6-minute diatribe recounting every single storyline from all of the Cars movies. It was incredible. Like I have to put a hand up. He's the king. He posts like no one's ever posted before. It's obnoxious at times, but it's also kind of incredible at times.
To me, that's absurd. Snorlax, things of that nature.
Yes, precisely.
There's a reason that Crab Rangoon tweet is so legendary, because it absolutely sounds like something that somebody would put Stephen A. Smith in front of a camera and ask him about the P.F. Chang's menu, and B, that would be something he would say. To me, that's absurd.
He also will say things all the time that are like way too raunchy for someone of his age with a platform as large as his on mainstream. Like, don't do that, man. But it's incredible. He's a master of his craft. I will give him that.
He really is. I sat there and I watched every minute of him go in on Jason Whitlock. And I am not like
that was awesome.
Yes, I enjoyed that a great deal. I am not sit in front of my phone and watch like a 45-minute video on my phone. That man had me riveted. That had me absolutely staring at my phone. I had holding it sideways, the whole thing, both hands. Wow!
Turn off portrait lock to watch that one.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a good one. For my on second thought today, I will just reprise a couple of takes I've had in the past because they were both proven wrong in Ames, Iowa on Wednesday night. Raekwon Battle is not, in fact, the biggest flopper in the Big 12 Conference. That would be Taman Lipsey and Keshawn Gilbert. It'd be those two. Those guys are even bigger floppers than Raekwon Battle. And in the past, and you can look at my Twitter history and see that I have said this, I have been very hard on Doug Sermons as considering him the worst official in the Big 12 Conference. No, it's Jerry Pollard. I was wrong. It was Jerry Pollard. It's always been Jerry Pollard. It was always him.
That's a hard bar to surpass, by the way, because Doug Sermons, awful.
Yeah, never good. Like, I always cringe when I see him, or I cringe when I see Ray Natili. But boy, Jerry Pollard, the opposite of a masterclass on Wednesday in Ames. I'm still annoyed. I'm still annoyed that I had to watch that basketball game. If you missed me yell about it on yesterday's show, you can find it in the archives on our YouTube page. And it was an hour number 2 of yesterday's show on the podcast page. But yeah, didn't enjoy that performance. We're going to take a break. Matt Derrick, Chiefs Digest, will join us next for our Chiefs Insider here on 580 Sports Talk. Matt Derrick of ChiefsDigest.com is our Chiefs insider. He joins us on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits Hotline every Friday at this time here on 580 Sports Talk. Matt, 6 AFC championship games in a row. If I'd gone back in time to the minutes before Patrick Mahomes' first career start and said, this guy's going to go to 6 straight AFC championship games in his first 6 years as a starter, what would you have told me? And would it be suitable for a repeat on the radio?
Oh, I mean, I'm sure it would be suitable. I mean, I certainly would have involved asking you just what kind of prescription medications you were abusing. Maybe even non-prescription. I'm not sure. But I definitely would have thought you were crazy.
6 in a row. Is this one maybe the most satisfying one to get to because it involved going on the road and winning a playoff game, and you had to deal with all of that talk last week about, Mahomes has never been on the road, and then they go on the road and they beat Buffalo and they deny Buffalo for the third time in 3 playoff games. Is there something more satisfying about being here, given everything this team has been through this year?
You know, it's a good question. I don't know if it's satisfaction as much as it's relief that's going around. I think that probably, the first one I think was probably pretty satisfying because that was just getting over the hump. I mean, getting to the AFC Championship game felt like a victory. And then, the second one that you win kind of felt like the next progression. I mean, it was, that was like the step this team needed to take in order to get where it wanted to be. And then it kind of became just routine. You just expected it. This year, you started with those expectations for sure, but I think that over the last half of the season, it became, pretty clear to anybody that this wasn't a guarantee, that the team was going to have to fight through it a bit more. And so, yeah, I mean, there's probably a sense of satisfaction maybe for some. Like I said, I think there's a little more, sigh of relief for others that they've managed to get here. Clearly not done. I mean, they want to get the next win to get where they want to be, but it's definitely been, at least it looks like, harder this time around than it has been for this team in the past.
Let's look at this matchup between the Chiefs and the Ravens. We've been debating this all week and want to get your perspective. Is this the best team the Chiefs have played against in an AFC championship game the last 6 years?
Yeah, I think that's a really fun question. I mean, because I think you could definitely argue that maybe it is. I don't know that the end of the Tom Brady era in New England, that those teams were really as good as maybe they had been in the past. And the Chiefs, really probably should have won that game. They lost to the Bengals, and that was a team that, once again, I think that, even though the Chiefs lost to that team twice, not sure that over a 10-game series, that maybe this is 5-5. I think you could probably make an argument for the Bills. That team was probably, I think, the best Buffalo team during this stretch. That was probably their best opportunity to reach a Super Bowl. But this Ravens team, I mean, they're a number 1 seed for a reason. They're, I think, a complete team across the board, offense, defense, special teams. I think you could argue it's Lamar's best season, which would make it really the Ravens' best season, and he's got more weapons around him than I think he's ever had before. Defense for the Ravens, I mean, yeah, they're number 1 scoring defense. I think they had probably had better defenses in the past, even in the last decade in Baltimore. But as far as being a complete team, this might be the best and the most challenging one the Chiefs have faced.
Matt Derrick is our guest, our Chiefs insider. He covers the Kansas City Chiefs for ChiefsDigest.com. So head on over to the website, check out his great work. Also, make sure you're following Chiefs Digest on YouTube as well. Subscribe over there while you're subscribing to our channel. And, of course, you can find Matt on Twitter at Matt Derrick. He joins us here on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits Hotline. Obviously, Matt, there is a drop-off going from Joe Thuney to Nick Allegretti because Joe Thuney, for my money, is the best left guard in the NFL. First-team All-Pro this year. He is as much of a superstar at that position as you can have at that position. But just how big is the drop-off going from him to Nick Allegretti?
I mean, different for sure. There's no doubt. I mean, Joe Thuney's an All-Pro, which means he can do a little bit of everything. Clearly a better pass protector than Allegretti. Run protection, run blocking, maybe they're closer in that regard. I mean, as Andy Reid says with Allegretti, not everything's pretty, but it gets done. I mean, he does a good job of it. not perfect, but he's maybe more of a brawler. Tooney is a technician in everything that he does, and certainly has strength too. But Allegretti, I mean, he gets it a little bit muddier, but he also can do all the things Chiefs ask of one of their guards. I mean, he can get outside and block when they get their outside zone stuff that they want to do. He can be I think a pretty tough interior blocker as well, as far as clearance of lanes for the ground game. So I don't know if in the ground game and the running, the attacking, that they miss a whole lot. I think you'll certainly see it in the pass protection, but then again, I mean, in this particular matchup, maybe they don't miss as much, because I think that with the Ravens, with Matabuke, I mean, you're going to see a lot of double teams. The Chiefs have been doing that lately. I mean, and I go back to the Dolphins when, their, best pass rusher was an interior pass rush. They did a lot of double teams. And I think you're going to see that again this week. And I think you would have seen that even with Joe Tooney. So, they're not just going to leave one of those guys on an island inside. I mean, they're going to shade the protection that direction, especially in the passing game. So I don't know if in pass protection the strategy would change a lot between Tooney and Allegretti. But I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, it's a different approach. The one thing that you get with Allegretti that you like is that this is a guy who's been around for 5 years. He knows the offense inside and out. He knows all the communications. They're not going to miss a beat in that regard. I mean, he can step in and that line will just keep on moving like it usually does.
Is that the biggest concern for the Chiefs in this game, that interior pressure and just interior quality of play from Baltimore? I mean, Matabike, I thought should have been first team All-Pro this year. I really like Travis Jones coming out of college a couple of years back. Michael Pierce has been a very solid player for years. They've got depth at the positions up front. Is that concern number one for this Chiefs offense, trying to mitigate the threat of that defensive interior?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any doubt. I mean, the interior pressure that the Ravens can create up front is fierce, but I think it's the linebackers behind them that are just as bad. I mean, especially if you're going to talk about trying to run the football. I mean, first, you've got to go by those guys up front that you just all mentioned, and then you got to get past Patrick McQueen and his friends. It's not real easy. So, and that's maybe the strength of the Ravens defense. I think there's an opportunity to throw the football against this team. Their corners aren't what they were, so I think there's an opportunity. And even on the ground, I mean, it's interesting because the Ravens are statistically there's an opportunity to run the ball against them a little bit between the 20s. But the one thing that teams haven't been able to do is do it inside the red zone. They're just one of the toughest run defenders in the red zone in the league. That's where I think could be the real challenge. I mean, because we know the Chiefs have been, such a schizophrenic red zone team. I don't know that they can really count on getting anything done in the run game. I mean, if maybe they can, maybe they'll surprise us, and Andy Reid will pull out the bag of tricks and the trick plays and try and get something done on the run. But with Baltimore's success, I think if you're going to succeed down there, it's going to be throwing the football. And unless you can attack those corners successfully, the middle of the field, against the Ravens, and especially those linebackers, because they can do so much, that's the real challenge to me.
And Matt, flipping sides here, Mark Andrews returns this week for the Ravens. Obviously, he hasn't played since November 16th. It seemed like he was almost ready to go last week. 2 tight end sets could be possible. How much, if any, is that going to be difficult? Most likely, it appears without Willie Gay, or at least a very limited Willie Gay if he's able to play.
Yeah, it will be interesting to me to see how the Chiefs deploy in that situation. I mean, you obviously would expect a lot of Drew Tranquil. I think he would obviously at this point be your best, pass defending linebacker. But then it's just how do you, maybe use Chamari Connor? Do you have Mike Edwards? And that's why I think, hey, the Mike Edwards injury and whether you've got him coming back from the concussion and he's available is pretty critical, because that's the difference between, having a Chamari Connor that you can play as a dime safety, dime corner, and maybe even match up with one of those tight ends versus, having to use Chamari on the back end, and now maybe, a Deion Bush is your dime safety, or you're using one of your corners. I mean, I wouldn't hesitate to put Josh Williams or Jalen Watson out there, even though there's going to be a little bit of a weight disadvantage. I mean, they've got the height to play with Mark Andrews, but obviously he's going to have the strength. that's going to make it a bit of a challenge. But then I also, I just don't know how much Mark Andrews is going to have. I mean, that was a really nasty ankle injury, and we both know these are two coaches that do like to play games with the roster and with, whether or not guys are going to be available and how much they can go. If I imagine that John Harbaugh is thinking to himself, if you could get the Chiefs to spend any time this week preparing for Mark Andrews, that's just 1 minute that they've spent on not preparing for something else. And then too, remember, I mean, Isaiah Likely has been lights out in the last half of the season. I mean, I think there's an argument to be made that he's been just as good, if not better, than Andrews has been. And I know that there's some people on the Ravens side who will say that it's even been a better offense with Likely out there because he offers them something different. To put the two of those guys on the field at the same time, and if Andrews is healthy, that could be a nightmare.
Matt, we could flip back to the Chiefs offense for one moment here. MVS had a couple of big catches in that game against the Bills last week in the divisional round. Was that enough, do you think, for the Chiefs to have a little bit more confidence in him if needed in this game coming up on Sunday? Or is it still too much of the inconsistency over the course of his entire career, but especially this season, that might give the Chiefs a little bit of trepidation targeting him late in the game?
I think you would have the trust in MVS, and I think both Reid and Mahomes would have the trust in him if he's open, if that's where the play can go, to go to him. I mean, I don't think it's to a point where they're just going to say, "Hey, MVS had a couple of great catches last week. He's ready for 11 targets now." Don't think that's the case, but that defenses have more and more in the last couple of games, especially once you got to the postseason. They're starting to pay more attention to Rashee Rice, and obviously they're still going to pay a lot of attention to Travis Kelce. How much you've got of Isaiah Pacheco, not practicing this week with the toe injury, that's going to be a question mark. But, you need somebody else to step up. Last week it was MVS. I mean, it could be somebody different this week. But I still think that, hey, if they get the matchup that they want, if they've got Marquez in a one-on-one situation and it's a matchup that Mahomes believes that he can win, he can get open, I don't think there's any doubt he's throwing him in the football.
Matt Derrick of ChiefsDigest.com is our Chiefs insider. He joins us on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits hotline here on 580 Sports Talk. Couple more questions for Matt as we wind things down here. We were debating this earlier in the week, Matt. Does Patrick Mahomes have to be superhuman to win this game for the Chiefs? Does this have to be vintage Mahomes, the very best Mahomes performance?
That's a really good question because I've been kind of thinking along those same lines too. I mean, I do think he has to be near perfect. That's the one thing that this Chiefs team, I just don't know if they can overcome our mistakes. I mean, we saw that during the regular season. If they lost the battle with penalties, with turnovers, with drops, that was just not don't have enough firepower to overcome that. The defense can keep them in games that way. But if they play like that, they really can't afford mistakes. And Mahomes in these last two playoff games, I mean, by and large, I think has just played absolutely flawlessly. I mean, this is, I think, how you have to play in this, current age of the NFL. This is probably a conversation that we can have in the off season about how defenses have caught up with offenses right now, and especially so many of the spread concepts. And because it's not just the Chiefs. I mean, offense was down around the league this year. And so it's not just that, but the way that, defenses are playing, they're forcing you to check down the football. I mean, they're doing everything that they can to try and make sure that you're not throwing the ball downfield, and especially with the Chiefs, definitely not taking deep shots. But even just, taking away the rest of the field and using different coverages and disguises, and they're forcing you to check down. And that was what really Mahomes did the last couple of weeks. He didn't take a ton of chances. He just put the ball where it needed to go. And if he does that again this week, I like their chance.
Aside from Mahomes going Super Saiyan and playing one of the best games of his career, what does a Chiefs win look like in this matchup? What things are they going to have to, which matchups, I guess, are they going to have to decisively win if they're going to win this game?
Well, I'm going to stick with my one prediction, which is not yet proven true, Dan, which is the Chiefs have to win the turnover battle. They actually lost it last week against Buffalo, but still won the game, and it was I think 1-1 against the Dolphins in the wild card round. but this one I think is even more so. I mean, if you lose a turnover battle to Lamar and the Ravens and that defense, I think you're putting yourself in too big of a hole. Sure, there could be a quirky turnover that maybe you can get away with, but no, I mean, I think that's the one thing that this offense has to do is, one, it has to protect the football, and two, if this defense can find a way to get their hands on a turnover, even better. Because that's usually how you beat Lamar Jackson. I mean, you have to make sure that you're putting pressure on him. You're forcing him to make mistakes. You're making him confused. And if you can do that, then he's beatable. What you can't have is a day where Lamar has a career day and goes for 300 and 3 touchdowns and no interceptions. I mean, that's a recipe for disaster. But I think that if the Chiefs get their defensive performance, and even if it's a usual one where they struggle in the first half but figure things out in the second half, I think they can hold this Ravens offense in check and win a close game.
You think they can? You've got 30 seconds. Do you think they will? What's the prediction?
I just when it comes down to it, I can't bet against Patrick Mahomes. I just can't. And not in a situation like this. I think I'm always going to go with the team that has Patrick Mahomes. If the Chiefs defense can play, I think they can pull this one out. So I am going with the Chiefs 24-20.
There you have it. That's Matt Derrick of ChiefsDigest.com. He is our Chiefs insider. He joins us on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits hotline every Friday here on 580 Sports Talk. Matt, it is always a pleasure. Enjoy the 6th consecutive Chiefs AFC Championship game, and we'll talk to you next week.
Sounds great, Dan. Take care, everybody.
That is Matt Derrick. That's a wrap on the 3 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk. It's also it for me for the weekend. I'm headed out to Viking Gymnasium at Seaman High School for coverage of Day 2 of the Capital City Classic on our Lewis Toyota High School Basketball Games of the Week. We're going to get things underway at 5 o'clock, so one more hour of sports talk, but that's where I'll be. Brendan and Spencer will have you the rest of the way. Coming up in the 4 o'clock hour, the day's sports talk headlines, a weekly winner crowned on what is wrong with you, and a whole lot more coming up. So stay with us for the 3rd and final hour today and the final hour of the week of 580 Sports Talk here on 580 WIBW.
Hey now, it is the final hour of 580 Sports Talk on a Red Friday, a feel-good Friday edition of the show. I'm Brendan Dworzinski, joined by Spencer Dupuis, yours truly from Kearney, Nebraska, on the road with the Washburn Ichabods this week. Meanwhile, Spencer back home in Topeka in the 580 studios on Huntoon Hill. No Dan for the rest of the show. He is on his way to Viking Gymnasium at Seaman High School for the Capital City Classic. Triple header action again today from Girls Tournament Week in the state of Kansas. Our broadcast coverage will begin right at the top of the 5 o'clock hour. So join Dan and the coach, Larry Latimer, for coverage of high school basketball here on 580 WIBW coming up again late this afternoon, 5 o'clock start time here on 580 WIBW. Really fun night of hoops last night. Looking forward to the action again coming up tonight at Seaman. While I mentioned on the road with Washburn, tough couple of games last night. The women just that awesome second quarter. They were down 20-5 in the first, surged all the way back, got the game tied at 28. They put together a 23-8 run to get all the way back into the game, but just an onslaught from Fort Hays State in the third quarter. They end up beating Washburn 70-45. Similar vibe in the game for the men as well. Really competitive first, I'd say almost 25 minutes of the game. It was back and forth, both teams trading baskets. It looked like it was pacing for a much higher scoring game than Hayes has had in many games so far this season. And then they started forcing a bunch of turnovers. Washburn just wasn't able to get up a bunch of shots, wasn't able to get into its offense, and a 20-0 run by Fort Hays State was too much for the Ichabods to overcome. I think it would be too much for most teams to overcome. So Washburn will try to bounce back coming up tomorrow when the Ichabods will be on the road against the Lopers of Nebraska Kearney. That game, those two games, our doubleheader, will have our broadcast begin at 1:45 and game one tip-off at 2 o'clock for Ichabods versus Lopers on our sister station, your home for Washburn Sports, Country 106.9. That's coming up tomorrow. Of course, we've got K-State action on our airwaves tomorrow here on 580 WIBW. The K-State men and women will be action, so you can tune in for both of those games here on your home for K-State athletics, 580 WIBW. Here in this final hour of the show, before we get you off for high school hoops, we'll get to our 580 Sports Talk headlines here in just a second. We've got today's What Is Wrong With You, and we'll get you some final thoughts on championship weekend in the NFL. We will find our conference champions and get you ready for what should be a blast of a game between the Chiefs and the Ravens coming up on Saturday. We'd love to get your texts, your thoughts on anything coming up in the game this week. Hit us up at 785-272-9429, or you can drop us a line in the YouTube comment section. 580 Sports Talk on YouTube is where you can find us. Had a very nice comment on yesterday's show from Ricky, who is a longtime listener, but was saying that, hey, I am glad I found you guys on YouTube because the radio in my truck is broken. And hey, perfect way to make sure you stay in touch with the show. So we appreciate all you guys who watch along, listen along, wherever you do that every day, or at least however often you're able to check us out here on 580 Sports Talk.
Also,
Spencer,
if you missed the show,
go ahead.
580sportstalk.com podcast.
That's right, 580WIBW.com. Just go to the podcasts tab, hover over that, click on 580 Sports Talk, and that is the easiest way to find us. If you missed any of the show, don't want to watch us, I can understand, but just want to listen to it broken down hour by hour, you can find it, again, at 580WIBW.com. All right, Spencer, let's dive into our 580 Sports Talk headlines for today. We'll start off with the injury report for the Chiefs and the Ravens coming up on Sunday for the AFC Championship game. The players who are out for Kansas City: Derrick with that tricep injury, missed the divisional round. He is also going to miss the championship round. That is a big one against a team that likes to run the ball and is very effective at running the ball. Having your best space eater out, that is a big deal. Sky Moore still returning from injured reserve. He's out, still dealing with that knee injury. Also out for the Chiefs, Joe Thuney. That, to me, is the big one here. Your starting left guard, all pro this year, dealing with that pectoral strain. Hoped he would be able to go. Maybe he can come back if the Chiefs win this weekend. He can play in the Super Bowl, but at least for this week against Baltimore, he will not be able to play. Additionally, reserve offensive lineman Prince Tega Wanogo, full participant all week, dealing with a quad injury, though, that popped up. He is out for this weekend. A handful of other players are questionable this week. That includes safety Mike Edwards dealing with a concussion. He did not practice Wednesday, was limited yesterday, but a full participant today, so hopefully all things are good to go, and he is able to to play. That is a big, big piece on the back end for the Chiefs. Isaiah Pacheco, he is dealing with an ankle and toe issue. Did not practice first 2 days of the week, but he was limited today. I assume he is going to be good to go in this one. Willie Gay, limited for 2 days, DNP today. Unknown if he is going to end up playing. He is officially questionable. We heard from Matt Derrick last hour that between these two teams, with Andy Reid, with John Harbaugh, they're probably going to try a little gamesmanship with the participation reports, with the rosters. May have to wait all the way until 90 minutes before kickoff to know which of these guys are going to be available to go. Also, Kadarius Toney, he was limited today with a hip injury. He's questionable for the game. Outside of Joe Thuney, Spencer, because that's my pick, and I think he is going to be the most important piece that the Chiefs are missing here. Which of these injuries, either guys who are certainly out or guys who are potentially going to be out, feels like the biggest deal for the Chiefs?
I think it's Willie Gay and his ability to be the spy on Lamar Jackson. I mean, even if he does go, it popped up last Saturday, I believe they added him to the injury report with his neck, a strain or whatever it was, and then he during the game played, tried to go, couldn't go. They finally took him out of the game. He was questionable, returned the whole second half, and then he never returned. So I think that's the biggest thing, because you want a guy like Willie Gay to be the spy for Lamar Jackson, but unfortunately it's leaning towards it not happening and him being out, or even if he does play, he'll be very limited, probably in the same capacity it appears from all indications, like he was last week, and maybe having to come out of the game.
Yeah, I like Willie Gay as a player a lot, and I've liked him ever since the Chiefs drafted him 4 years ago, and indicated that it's probably it for his time with the Chiefs. Once this season comes to a close, he's going to end up hitting free agency. You'd love to see him out there because he does offer a unique skill set that I don't think anyone else on this team has. The ability to go sideline to sideline, catch up to running backs, catch up to a fast quarterback like Lamar Jackson, and also I would argue, and I don't even know how much of an argument this is, he's your best coverage linebacker that the Chiefs have. I think he's got the best ball skills of anybody in that linebacker core. Between him, Bolton, Tranquil, any of those guys, I think the best ball skills belong to Willie Gay. So if you don't have him available, that's obviously a big deal. I'm going to give a shout to Derrick Nottie, too. The fact that he's going to be out for a second week in a row. Yes, Buffalo has played better with the run game, or had played better with their run game over the past few weeks, really with the emergence of James Cook. But facing Baltimore is a different beast, and he opens up so many things, specifically for Chris Jones playing off his shoulder, but for so many guys in that defensive front, both the line itself and in the linebacker core. He eats up space. He inhales double teams. Not having a guy like that is, I think, a big deal against a team that wants to run the ball a lot. And speaking of that team that wants to run a lot, your injury report for the Ravens this week, one player listed as doubtful. That's linebacker Delshon Phillips, mostly a reserve and a special teamer dealing with a shoulder injury. He is doubtful to go. Marlon Humphrey, questionable, but he was a full participant today, limited the previous 2 days. Expect that he will be able to play. Tylan Wallace, the punt returner and wide receiver, did not practice Wednesday, was limited the rest of the week. He's dealing with a knee issue. He's questionable. Same can be said for reserve cornerback Rock Yassin with a knee injury. But the big one, Mark Andrews, the tight end, ankle injury, has not played since mid-November. Spencer, I don't remember, you mentioned the date earlier, November 6th or 16th, I believe it was. Yeah. He has been a full participant in practice all week, coming off of injured reserve. We found out earlier today he is going to come off of IR and is going to be able to go to some degree coming up on Sunday. That's a big deal for the Ravens. He is a heck of a player. He's Lamar Jackson's favorite target. I think the time without him has allowed Jackson to continue to develop his rapport with Isaiah Likely, who we have found out is a very capable NFL tight end, with the rookie Zay Flowers, with Rashad Bateman, and a little bit with OBJ as well. So I think that time away was almost a blessing in disguise for this Ravens team. And now having those things already built up with Andrews coming back, going to be a lot for the Chiefs to handle in this game.
Yeah, I really think it is. And, one of the intriguing things about Mark Andrews is because of the teams I was covering and the people I know, when I'm going on Twitter now, people are like, what percentage of snaps do you want him to play? And I'm seeing between 20 and 30 in the red zone, third downs. But a guy that obviously that injury could have been very much more devastating than it was. He had last week been against a tougher opponent. He almost could have probably come back last week, because they said he was testing it in pregame, if I remember correctly, seeing like a lot of the NFL insiders were saying that he was full participant on Wednesday and Thursday in practice last week. So I think there might be a bit more in the tank than some are expecting from Mark Andrews this weekend. If he was full participant last week, they held him out because They thought they had a great chance to beat the Texans, and obviously they blew them out in the second half. So when it comes to the team against the Chiefs, he obviously wants to play it for a chance to go to the Super Bowl. I think we could see him on a lot more snaps than people are anticipating.
All right, so that is a look at your injury report. Spencer, what's your first headline for us today?
My first headline is not too many headlines. We've had very much NFL coaching carousel headlines throughout the week. This is not a head coaching carousel headline. This is a thing I just saw Adam Schefter earlier today. Former Chargers head coach Brandon Staley interviewing for the Packers defensive coordinator position. He's also drawn interest to replace Raheem Morris in LA with the Rams. So he would stay in LA to be with the Rams if McVay did hire him. But what is your take on that as the Packers fan and a guy that covers the AFC West?
I don't think it is as bad as Joe Barry. Like, at least the 1 year in which Staley was a coordinator, his defense was better than any year of Joe Barry as a defensive coordinator. Now, the Chargers defenses have been bad after they spend a bunch on talent. They gave the huge contract to Joey Bosa. They go out and they get Khalil Mack. They tried to add JC Jackson, and that was such a disaster. They let him go midway through last season. His defenses were terrible in LA with the Chargers. I mean, I guess it's probably a step up, but I am not a Brandon Staley fan. I do not think that is a good fit for this Packers team. And again, people will say, well, yeah, but maybe he's just a good coordinator and he's not a good head coach. There are lots of guys who are like that. Wade Phillips was like that when everybody thought of him very highly as a defensive coordinator. He was a DC for 1 year, though. 1 year. And yes, it was a good year. That was a really good Rams defense in 2020. But it's also a defense that had Aaron Donald at his peak. That is also a team that had Jalen Ramsey in his peak years at the same time. They had incredible talent on that team. And I like a decent amount of Green Bay's talent, but it's not, you don't have a surefire Hall of Famer like that, like Aaron Donald up front, or a surefire Hall of Famer like a Jalen Ramsey or some of the other pieces they had there at the time. He's just been so transient as a coach and has been all over the place. And some of them have been, decent stints, but he went in the stretch of just, let's see here, 6 years, Spencer, 6 years, or even 5, because he spent 2 years at this one stop I'm going to start with. In 5 years, he went from defensive coordinator for Division III John Carroll University to 2 years as an assistant for the Bears, 1 year as an assistant for the Broncos, defensive coordinator for the Rams, head coach of the Chargers. I mean, that is light speed, the rate at which he got to a head coaching job, that he even got to a defensive coordinator job, only was a coordinator for 1 year. I don't believe it. I don't see it. I guess it's better than what we already had, but I would not be especially happy with Brandon Staley. I think there's a number of other guys who are better candidates who have been brought up as potential connections to this job for Green Bay. So I would pass. I would certainly pass. By the way, speaking of the Packers defensive coordinator, reportedly Joe Barry is going to interview for the Bears defensive coordinator job. Why? This is a very safe adage, I think. And I don't know if you've heard us say this before, Spencer, but I'm sure you've heard it elsewhere. If the team that you're taking a coach from is thrilled that coach is leaving and going to your team, you probably aren't making the right call. And I don't think Joe Barry is going to get that job. It'd be funny if he did take that job in Chicago. I don't think that he will. He also is going to interview, I think, to be the linebackers coach in Philadelphia, if I'm not mistaken. Whereas the opposite,
which makes more sense.
Right. As a position coach, I'm sure he'd be fine. He was fine in Los Angeles before he came out to Green Bay to be the Packers defensive coordinator in 2021. In fact, he was the linebackers coach for Brandon Staley's defense in 2020 with the Rams, because everything has to be so circular and it's all just a good old boys club. But yeah, it's kind of an unfortunate twist if you're Green Bay. There are better candidates out there, absolutely better candidates out there. Next headline for me, how about a little Royals baseball? You haven't gotten to cover the Kansas City Royals with us yet. This will be your first year of Royals baseball. Well, I got here, and then the Royals had 1 year where they were even competitive, and then have been the worst team in baseball ever since. Now it feels like they're actually on the way up, and they have had a solid offseason so far, especially when you add in a guy like a Seth Lugo, when you add in Michael Wacha, when you add in Will Smith in the bullpen. They have done a great job pitching staff-wise, specifically adding talent. We know that they've got potential, at least on the offensive side. If you expect Bobby Witt to be even better this year than he was last year, or at least just as good as he was in the second half, but extrapolated over the course of a full season, you would assume, with healthy Vinny Pasquantino as well, Salvador Perez is still going to do his thing. This should be an even better offensive team than it was last year. Well, according to Ken Rosenthal of The Athletic, the Royals apparently don't think they're done with their offseason, which, I mean, I'm super excited to hear about. But this is what Ken Rosenthal said from his notebook in his daily newsletter over at The Athletic. This was actually published yesterday. But he says this, while the Royals have added Seth Lugo, Michael Wacha, they've gone after 6 free agents, have spent $105 million this offseason, they remain open to adding one more piece, a closer. With the free agent market all but picked out, the Royals' preference is to make a trade, according to a source. The problem is that market is thin on possibilities. The Brewers are probably not going to trade Devin Williams, the reigning National League reliever of the year. They were targeting Aroldis Chapman, but he went elsewhere. He went to Pittsburgh, so the Brewers probably aren't going to trade their current closer. Doubt that Emmanuel Clase gets moved because he's one of the few really good pieces the Guardians have left. And while Kenley Jansen is probably available for the Red Sox, he is too rich for the Royals' blood. So with all of that in mind, it might be hard to go out and find a guy. However, the Royals are apparently still tracking to at least attempt to make a move. Rosenthal ends his blurb on the Royals by saying this: by acquiring a closer, the Royals could shift Smith to more of a setup role, strengthening the back of their bullpen. It will not be easy for them to pull off such a move, but they don't view their offseason as over just yet. If you're a Royals fan, you should be absolutely thrilled about that. You should be thrilled by the notion that the Royals are still trying to add more quality major league talent. Now, what would it take to get a piece like that? I don't know. Would it cost you MJ Melendez? Would it cost you a mid-level prospect? And we know the Royals farm system has issues. You will come to learn, Spencer, that the Royals farm system has some issues and definitely needs a little more depth to it. But I love this approach by the Royals to say, hey, look, this division sucks, and the Indians don't seem to care about winning. The White Sox are a complete disaster. The Twins haven't done anything to improve themselves. The Tigers are a disaster. Why can't we at least go contend in this division? Again, assuming we will have continued improvement and a healthier offensive lineup this year with Witt and Pasquantino plus an aging Salvi as your cornerstones. Continue to put money into this pitching staff, both in terms of the bullpen and the starting rotation. I love it. And if the Royals are able to swing a trade to get an above average closer, all of a sudden, I'm not going to pick the Royals to win this division, but all of a sudden they become much more of a player in the AL Central.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with you there. Back to a player that was mentioned in that article, Aroldis Chapman. I feel like the move for him to Pittsburgh came out of left field. You don't see the Pirates spending a lot of money on pitching or just guys in general that aren't homegrown. And having covered teams within the area or people that are covering the Pirates, that to me shows some renewed interest in them trying to build a team for once in Pittsburgh. Sidetracking, side off of the Royals talk, but the Pirates are trying to build, which is weird to say because they haven't really been good, and doesn't seem like they ever want to be good because their owner's a cheapskate.
Yeah, it's felt a little bit like what the Royals did last year when they signed Aroldis Chapman, although that was very obvious from the beginning that if it goes terribly, well, he didn't cost you all that much money. It was a reclamation project. And if it goes really well, you're going to end up trading him for prospects. And they traded him for Cole Reagans, who, as of last season and going into this year, is the ace of the staff. So if you're able to, maybe Pittsburgh's approach is to do something similar to that. But what a fall from grace. He goes from the biggest deal in relief pitching for several years in Cincinnati, gets paid out the wazoo and is really good in New York, becomes the centerpiece of a trade at the deadline to the world champion Cubs in 2016, goes back to New York, gets worse and worse and worse, then goes to a non-contending team in the Royals, now another non-contending team after winning the World Series after a midseason trade. He has had a wild career, not even to mention the bad things he's done off the field as well. But as a baseball player, he has had a wild career. Next up, Spencer, what you got?
We'll stick with baseball, move to the college ranks. Saw this come across the timeline earlier today. K-State's Tyson Neighbors. He is the Big 12 preseason pitcher of the year, but also he is named D1Baseball.com's Big 12. He's basically the preseason all Big 12 for the Big 12s, unanimously voting. I believe that's the coaches, right? Coaches vote that.
I believe you're correct about that.
And then D1Baseball.com, their Big 12 pitcher of the year. I mean, you look at Neighbors' stats last year, the closer struck out 86 in over 24 innings. He had 99 on the radar. So good, projecting a great season for the K-State closer.
Yeah, I think that there is good reason to believe K-State will be a tournament team this year, barring any sort of calamity, any sort of disaster. We talked about that with Fitz a little bit, in fact, on Wednesday, all the hype going into this season. And the way last year ended was such a kick in the gut that, you know, the RPI, the strength of schedule was poor, but they won so many big games, so many big series once they got to conference play. It was unfortunate to get left out, but there's a lot of hype behind K-State baseball this year, and for good reason. Should be a pretty decent year overall for both KU and K-State on the diamond for baseball. I know KU is still trying to build with Dan Fitzgerald, who's going into his second year with the program, has added a ton of talent through the transfer portal. So hopefully KU can get to a level of respectability. And for K-State, I mean, the expectation needs to be NCAA tournament this year. In fact, it really has to be for head coach Pete Hughes. But I've got I would say my expectations are solidly that they are a tournament team this year, again, barring some sort of complete unforeseen disaster. One more headline that I wanted to get to today, Spencer, is from the Big 12 and the reporting today of John Rothstein of CBS Sports and 100 other places and some bizarro tweets. So he says today on Twitter, the Big Ten is planning to stay at 20 league games when UCLA, USC, Oregon, and Washington join the conference in 2024-25, next academic season. The Big Ten is also planning to only have 15 of its 18 teams in the Big Ten tournament starting in 2025. So a couple of thoughts here. They are going to a system in which they are going to go from 20 league games with 14 teams in the conference, so you play all other 13 teams with then 5 repeats, to now, if I'm not mistaken, you're going to play everybody once with, I would imagine, one locked-in permanent rival. So for the newcomers, it's easy. USC will always play UCLA twice, and you're always going to get Oregon, Washington twice. That makes sense. The rest of the conference, though, I mean, how do you set that up? Who is going to be the one protected rival that you get? Is it going to mirror their football scheduling? I don't know. That is kind of lame. I mean, I think it's a bummer that we no longer get the true round robin in the Big 12, which was so cool and so unique to get the true round robin, a true way to pick a champion at the end of the regular season. So I miss that already. But then the weird part about this, okay, 15 of 18 make it to the Big 12 or the Big 10 tournament under this report from John Rothstein. And it's not completely out of nowhere that you would have a non-full, like your entire league wouldn't make it into your conference tournament. That's not a super new thing. Lots of mid-major conference. Yeah,
Conference USA had it when I was covering Marshall.
There you go. Exactly. The MIAA, I know that's Division II, but the MIAA, top 10 get in. Teams 11 through 14, sorry, you don't qualify for the postseason. So that in and of itself is not all that weird. Why would you not just do 16?
Yeah.
16 is a perfectly sized bracket. Everybody gets to play the same number of games. It's traditional bracket tournament style. Why only do 15? That makes things a lot more well, not even necessarily more complicated. You just give someone a free bye, but I don't know. It's bizarre that you would go to 15 and pick 3 out instead of 2 out, but that's kind of the way the Big Ten does things.
The NFL, 1 bye, they go to 1 bye. I mean, like, I feel like maybe, well, I guess Big Ten, they're going, I don't know about basketball. I know in football, they're going away from divisions mattering.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that doesn't matter. But I mean, in a lot of conferences, depending on your division, the leader in the division, the East or West, North or South, whatever, AB, whatever you want to call it, they usually, I feel like in a lot of conference tournaments, do get the bye. If they do give buys out, it's 1 and one on one side and one on the other side. So that's interesting.
Leaders and legends.
Yeah. I have another piece of news before we get or finish this segment. Just saw it pop up.
Let's do it.
Omar Ruiz from NFL Network was at Kyle Shanahan's presser today after practice. He said, Kyle Shanahan says star wide receiver Deebo Samuel is not on the injury report and he'll play Sunday.
Wow.
He was a full go today. So don't even have to worry about him being a question at all now.
That's a big deal. That is a really, really big deal for San Francisco. If he's able to go, I mean, you add so many different elements to that offense. You can use him as a running back. You can use him in the short passing game, the deep passing game, safety blanket there then for Brock Purdy. That's a big deal. Getting him back on the field full strength is going to make things a lot tougher for that Detroit defense. There's no doubting that. We owe you a timeout. That'll do it for today's 580 Sports Talk headlines. And coming up on the other side of this break, we will find our weekly winner in What Is Wrong With You. That's coming up next here on 580 Sports. that time. We need to find a weekly winner in What Is Wrong With You here on 580 Sports Talk. Brendan and Spencer rounding out the week with you. Dan Lucero is live from Seaman High School, Viking Gymnasium. I almost called it Seaman Stadium. That's football season, not basketball season. We've got our triple header coverage from the Capital City Classic Girls Basketball Tournament coming up, starting at 5 o'clock here on 580 WIBW. So it'll be Spencer and I to pick our weekly winner. And of course, What Is Wrong With You is brought to you by Top City Metal Supply. They cut the metal you need to your specifications, and you know what that means. It saves you time, money, and material. So never settle when it comes to your metal with Top City Metal Supply, located on South Topeka Boulevard, halfway between Frito-Lay and Forbes Field, right back at home in the capital city. Our winner so far for the week, it is the guy who, you get the whole thing in the headline here, the gentleman who was at an elementary school open house. He had a gun on him, unholstered, tucked into his sweatpants, and then he was playing basketball while there, and he did the Plexico Burris and shot himself in the leg. I think I covered all the details of that story.
Yeah, that's basically it. I
So
feel like
that is
Plexico Burris himself. I feel like you could even just say that.
So, all right, I'm going to tell you, I mean, this is just like dumb boy stuff that my friends and I did as kids. So that happened in 2008, right? So I turned 14 in September of 2008. So we thought this was the peak of comedy at the time. But we would, like, if we were at a school dance or something, or because we had, like, in junior high, these like weekly or bi-weekly Friday dance things, and they'd play music and whatever. And we would like hold up two fingers like it was a gun and point to our leg and go, do the Plexico Burris, then just like hop around. We thought that was really funny when we were 13, 14 years old, my friends and I, do the Plexico Burris. So yeah, that's it. But we didn't actually do it. Like, we didn't have a real gun and tuck it in our waistband of our sweatpants and shoot ourselves with it. So our two news stories today, Spencer, I will go first with today's stories. And we've got a guy who got in a bad situation entirely of his own doing, and then got mad and took it out on some public property. An Orlando man previously accused of attacking a Lynx bus because he was dropped off at Disney World instead of SeaWorld. Well, they actually ended up dropping the charges. But let's get you the story. It happened back in November of last year when the 37-year-old man was arrested after causing $500 in damage to a Lynx bus. That is the name of the bus service down there in the greater Disney World area, Lake Buena Vista, by punching and kicking the front glass door several times, causing it to break. This incident happened at the bus stop at Disney Springs, formerly downtown Disney, I believe. The Lynx bus driver told deputies he picked up the man at Lynx Central Station, and when they arrived to Disney Springs, he was asleep. The bus driver told the man he had to get off the bus because it was his last stop, but that's when the man became irate with and started to yell and curse at him. The man then got off the bus, but stayed outside of it, saying he needed to go to SeaWorld. The bus driver didn't allow him back on the bus, and that's when he, quote, punched the front door glass several times and then kicked the bottom glass of the front door, causing it to break in a spiderweb pattern. He then started walking toward Buena Vista Drive, where he was later located by deputies at the entrance of the Typhoon Lagoon Water Park. He was arrested at the time for criminal mischief and was transported to the Orange County Booking and Release Center. So the charges have been thrown out, but this guy entirely brought this problem on himself. You know how you could have gotten to your stop and not been dropped off at the wrong place? Don't fall asleep on the bus.
Yeah.
That's the number one thing. Just be prepared, be ready to actually get to your stop, and you could have avoided this entire thing.
That's a similar sentiment to my story today. Shout out to Dan for the assist. Florida man impersonating a cop just wanted police to, quote, do their job and get them off the streets. Devontae Thompson inadvertently called 911 on himself after pulling over a motorist he said was driving recklessly. He was arrested for impersonating a police officer after he accidentally took it upon himself to pull over a reckless driver, then called 911 on the motorist. The 29-year-old allegedly used his SUV to pull over another vehicle in a parking lot of a TD Bank in Pembroke Pines, north of Miami. He reportedly justified the stop by showing the driver a stolen badge, which once belonged to a now retired sheriff's deputy in Louisiana. According to local station WSVN. Thompson then called 911, telling the operator the motorist needed to be stopped due to their reckless driving. Instead, responding officers arrested Thompson for impersonating an officer. He told a Miami station after he left the jail on Wednesday, quote, "I just wanted the police to do their job and get them off the streets." He said he felt moved to act due to trauma related to car crashes. Quote, I got into a car accident a long time ago previously in my life. And, people that just drive recklessly and crazy. I mean, honestly, I just want to get this done. I just didn't want it to happen again. When a reporter with WPLG asked Thompson whether he lied to the driver about being a police officer, he responded, "No further questions." The reporter followed up by asking, "Are you denying that you told this driver that you were a cop?" "I'm not denying," he replied. The judge set Thompson's bond at a relatively low $2,500 because he has no criminal history. So again,
that's good.
Brought it upon himself, though.
Yeah, entirely upon himself. That's really funny. That is hysterical. That gets the win for today, for sure. Like, I love stories when people rat on themselves. The best ones we get once in a while, and it happens a couple times a year, is when someone calls the police and is like, "Hey, the meth I bought on Craigslist is no good. I want the person arrested for fraud." I'm like, "Hey, can you bring that and yourself and your belongings into the police station?" Actually, those stories are some of my absolute favorites. This is really funny. That's a good story. That's my winner for today for sure.
Yeah, I would agree, but I still don't think it tops Plaxico Burressing himself.
Yeah, Plaxico Burress Jr. over here shooting himself. Dude, again, if you want to have your gun and conceal carry, have it holstered, whatever is, as long as it is within your rights as delegated to us by the U.S. Constitution and our Bill of Rights and the Kansas Constitution and all of that, go for it. That's fine. I wouldn't personally bring it to an elementary school. I doubt he is supposed to have it at the elementary school, but especially, dude, holster it. Don't keep it in your waistband and then go play basketball with it.
I think that's the dumbest part about it.
So careless.
The dumbest part about it is he decided, he's like, you know what? I can still carry. One, I'm going to bring it into the school. And then two, I'm going to go pick up basketball with it and not holstered. And then that's a no-win situation.
All right, we're going to stick with that one then. That is our winner for the week in What Is Wrong With You, brought to you by Top City Metal Supply. Metal cut to order when you need it. That's Top City Metal Supply on South Topeka Boulevard. Coming up on the other side of this break, we've got the final word on some practice squad elevations for the Kansas City Chiefs, and we'll get you some final thoughts on the NFL weekend coming up. That's coming up on the other side of this break here on 580 Sports Talk. Brendan and Spencer here with you on 580 Sports Talk. Thanks so much for hanging out with us on this feel-good Friday afternoon, a Red Friday as well. Chiefs versus Ravens coming up in the AFC Championship game on Sunday. That is the first game of the day, 2 o'clock kickoff. Then at 5:30, the NFC Championship game, Lions versus 49ers. You can hear both of those games via Westwood One right here on 580 WIBW coming up on Sunday. Some news injury-wise from the Kansas City Chiefs today. In addition to the injury report, which we gave you earlier, we know who is questionable, who is not going to play. Derrick has been placed on injured reserve, so his season and potentially, since he's on a one-year deal, his Chiefs career coming to a close due to this tricep injury. I keep saying it, man. I do not love that he is not going to be available for this game. That it's unfortunate timing. That's the NFL. That's football. Injuries happen. It's part of the game, but that is definitely a bummer. Darius Harris is the choice to be activated to the full roster, to the 53-man roster, and has been signed to an active roster contract. Does it feel like that is some Willie Gay insurance as well? I mean, the Chiefs could have elevated someone from the practice squad anyway to fill that roster spot if Gay can't go for this weekend. But with the fact that the player they're signing to the 53, with the fact that it is a linebacker and a guy who has played a lot of snaps for this Chiefs team over the last couple of years, does that seem to indicate that this is some Willie Gay insurance?
Yeah, that seems to indicate to me that either he's going to be out, but they, want to play some games, or there's like a 15% chance he's going to go, or he's going to go and they're going to have somebody else inactive. And this is going to be a guy if he's going to be limited, even if he goes. We talked about that before.
All right, so we got to our keys to the game a little bit earlier on today. We actually led off the show with that. And if you missed that, you can go check out the podcast of the show at 580WIBW.com, or you can just go check us out on YouTube, 580 Sports Talk on YouTube. You can rewind the stream. I don't know that people always know that. You can go back. If you're a little bit late getting to the party and you said, I missed the keys to the game, you can just scrub the thing all the way back and you can restart and jump around to whatever point you want. And again, that's on YouTube, 580 Sports Talk. We'd appreciate it if you would subscribe while you're over there, but we appreciate you for watching along and hanging out with us online, wherever you are checking out the show or listening on your car, home radio, wherever, on either 580 AM or FM 104.9. But we got to our keys to the game a little bit earlier. To close things out here, Spencer, before we get out of here, I want to phrase this a little bit differently. So we'll take this from two different angles, or it's a two-part question. If the Chiefs are going to win on Sunday, or if the Chiefs do win on Sunday, what do you think is going to be the biggest reason why they pull off the win? And vice versa, if it's the Ravens who come out on top, what do you think will be the biggest reason why the Ravens would come out with the victory?
We'll start first with the Chiefs. I think they limit the impact Lamar Jackson has on the ground. That would be if the Chiefs won, that's how they would win. And then if the Ravens do win, I think it's as simple as Lamar Jackson dominating through the air and on the ground.
Yeah, I think you make a good point about limiting Lamar, and there's only so much you can do. I mean, he has played absolutely phenomenal football over the course of this year. Can you force any turnovers? This isn't a team that takes the ball away all that much. I would not be surprised if the Chiefs have a turnover of their own in this game. Can you force, even a tipped ball, interception, a fumble? They run the ball a lot. And when you run the ball a lot, you are susceptible to fumbling it. Can you take the ball away, force a turnover at least once? I think that would go a long way in this game. If the Ravens do end up winning, I think it's because they just get they dominate in the trenches. That's what I'm going to say here. It's the combination of, with no Joe Tooney for the Chiefs, they're able to generate just a little too much pressure on Patrick Mahomes to make him uncomfortable, maybe force him into some bad decisions, some awkward off-balance throws, whatever it might end up being. And additionally, going the other direction, offensively, they just overpower the Chiefs up front, and they're able to get that run game going because no Derrick is going to change the lineup, change the rotation a little bit. That might be difficult against this team. And the fact that Baltimore's just really good at it, man. That's why one of my keys to this game was you have to be so sound in your assignments, have that gap integrity to try to limit those looks for Baltimore as best as you can. So I think if Baltimore wins, it's because they dominate in the trenches up front. I think for the Chiefs, if they end up winning, it's going to be because they rely on their superstars to make superstar plays. And you're going to get maybe not a perfect game from Patrick Mahomes. I don't think you need that necessarily to win, but he's got to go out there and be effective. Rashee Rice has to play well, can't drop the ball, can't fumble the ball. You're going to need to get a real contribution from Travis Kelce. The same thing goes for Isaiah Pacheco. And the same thing on defense, too. That's why Dan said he thinks Chris Jones is in line for a big game, because there's a financial incentive involved in it for him, too. But the fact that you need him to be good trying to track down Lamar Jackson, and even if you don't sack him, force him into some bad throws, maybe force him into some turnover-worthy plays. Same question. Let's go quick throughout the rest of the action that's coming up this weekend, NFL-wise, and we'll get to some college hoops, too. Same questions going for the 49ers and Lions game. What is the biggest reason if the Lions win, and vice versa for the 49ers?
I think for the Lions, if they get all facets of their offense working, it could be a shootout, and I think they have the ability to win in a shootout. I mean, Deebo Samuel says he's 100%, but it's a pain issue, so I'm reading this on Twitter. I just read it now. I can't figure out where it is. But pain, Nick Wagner, ESPN NFL reporter covering the 49ers. Basically, it's a pain issue, and he, I guess he was asking how he would protect his shoulder, and Deebo says, "I ain't protecting nothing," end of quote. So if the pain, if he gets hit, dives for a ball, makes a diving catch, I think losing Deebo like they did last week, but against a team that I think has the ability to pour it on, would be the reason that the 49ers win. But I think the Lions can win if they can get all facets of their offense going, and Laporta's off the injury report.
I think for me, when it comes to the Lions, their aggressiveness needs to pay off when they go for it on fourth and medium, when they just go for it on fourth down in general, go for 2-point conversions. They've got to execute. It simply comes down to that, because the 49ers will make you pay if you mess up in those situations. And for the Lions, I think it's if they're able to, again, force a turnover, generate some pressure on Brock Purdy. The Packers were able to do that for 3 quarters, and they forced him into a pretty bad game. They turned it on in the fourth, San Francisco did. But if you take advantage of those Purdy mistakes, force a turnover, force a bad throw, get him sacked on third down, I think the Lions are going to have a real chance in that one, although I'm still taking the 49ers to win, Lions to cover. Real quick, college basketball this weekend. KU takes on Iowa State in Ames. Do the Jayhawks pick up the win against Iowa State?
Yes.
I think so, too. I think this is going to be an inflection point for this KU season. I think it's going to be ugly. I think it's going to be low scoring. I do think Kansas ends up getting the win. And finally, real quick, Kansas State, they got a tough one. They're on the road against Houston. Can K-State win? Not necessarily will they, but do you think K-State has enough to possibly pull off the upset?
I don't think so. I think they get too much in their heads from the last game.
Yeah, it's tough to come off of that game against Iowa State and immediately have to go face Houston, but I think Houston's going to pull off the win. Is it impossible? No, but it's hard for road teams to win, especially when you're going up against a team that's as good as the Houston Cougars are. We owe you one final timeout. We'll come on back. We'll wrap up this week of 580 Sports Talk coming up here on 580. Time to wrap up 580 Sports Talk for the day and the week with a quick final word before we get it out to Dan for high school hoops. Spencer, you're up.
Final word. Bobby Slowick needs to be hired as a head coach somewhere, just so we can complete this six figure of all the former then Redskins head coaches that led the team to, or assistant coaches that led to 3-13 season. Because I'm tired of seeing this. So it needs to happen now, not next year. It needs to happen. Like the Seahawks need to go hire Bobby Slowick right now, just so it won't happen anymore after Raheem Morris got hired yesterday. I'm tired of seeing this, and I hope it doesn't get mentioned at all, but it probably will get mentioned because, the 49ers are playing. So.
Sure thing. Final word for me. I think the Chiefs absolutely can win this weekend, but I'm picking Baltimore. I know it's stupid to pick against Patrick Mahomes, and I hope he shows me up. I hope the Chiefs end up winning. I just think Baltimore's got a little bit too much juice, and without Joe Tooney up front, I think that's going to make things really difficult on this Kansas City offense. That does it for 580 Sports Talk today. We're going to send it out to the Capital City Classic. Dan Lucero and Larry Latimer coming up next. Until next week, for Dan, for Spencer, I'm Brendan. This has been 580 Sports Talk.